The Grey Lodge plus Ultra presents Return to Hyperborea, a speculative Gnostic gospel, the new American Adam Kadmon, Arc 7. Pretty much, we're a plus ultra space. We believe magic is real. We're the Grey Lodge. We're a circle of speculative magicians, you could say, speculative ontologists, surfing the Quicksilver wave that is an app called X, which transcends both space and time, is both the 10 and the 11, in consensus, in synthesis, and also in rectification, all at the same time. So that's our space for tonight. Obviously, we're going to discuss sort of archetypes of the Adam Kadmon and why I think it's important to be flexible in some of our ideas and not so rigid to adhere to what the hero or what that could mean. Like, how can he transcend who he has been? I think that's an interesting idea, and obviously joined by co-hosts. So I'm Jin the Ninja. I host a show called Threshold Saints. Everyone on our co-hosts have been a co-host of mine as well. Obviously, Monty with our anime and occultism series, Solar Exile with Evola, and upcoming 2 episodes with Matt Murrah, also joined by Dapper Zan. So on one of those, but one of them is his solo debut, I guess you could say. Obviously, he's been on Greyhorns before, but we're looking forward to all of that. Monty also has an upcoming episode, and as soon as I get some things scheduled, Solar will also have an upcoming episode, another one. So all is great. I will let the boys introduce themselves after I do room shout out. So Shakti, we have our Yogini from Japan. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you. We invite you into the circle. Dr. Joseph Reed, our McLuhan chair of the Grey Lodge. Thank you so much, brother, for coming. Appreciate you. Mookie Krotikini of the Lodge. Thank you so much for coming, transcending space and time to be with us. We appreciate it. And I will let the boys introduce themselves as they will it. Monty, Matt, and Solar, go ahead in any order that you deem necessary.
I guess I'll just jump in here. What's going on, everybody? Hi, I'm Monty. Just this week, our Jen and I's episode of Free Run dropped, which I think is probably the best thing that him and I have done to date. I'm very proud of that. Please check that out. And I had a 20,000K tweet today, this week. So everything's looking up. Grey Lodge to the moon.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm sorry, Monty. Absolutely. Free Run, one of my favorite episodes, just in terms of like speculative serial experiments and speculative ontology. That's what my show is supposed to be. So I think that was definitely a culmination, almost an apotheosis. I'm very critical of myself, so obviously I can never really give myself an A, but I give Monty an A, and I love that episode, and that's why I gave him the special pink color, because only some boys are can handle it. That's it's a rare color, so I gave it to Monty. So and more coming. We've got more things coming, and Monty has his episode with Thomas coming up, and I think he did a great job sort of critiquing and yet refining some of the things that are in the discourse about JJK, Jujutsu Kaisen. So thank you so much, Monty, and appreciate you, brother. Matt, please go ahead, and then Solar.
Hey guys, how are you going? Long time no see. I'm at Mora, Kabbalah, Tarot, Astrology, you know the drill. Everything magic. Happy to see you guys again. It's been a couple of secret operations that I was doing last weeks, so can say about that. A lot of concerts as well. I think it was the most that I did. I think it was like 4 in a week, so that was great as well. So very excited for today, and glad to have you all here.
Yeah, thank you guys, and welcome back, Matt. It's good to have you around again, man. We miss you, not just in the chat and kind of generally, but definitely in these spaces. I'm Solar Exile. Got nothing to plug other than the recent episode that finally dropped. with Jin on Threshold Saints, talking a little bit about Evelyn Buddhism. That was very exciting, and I was very humbled to be able to be able to contribute to that work product. Something I very much believe in, right? And I think probably like most people, but I found my way to this chat and this sort of community, this sort of like strange corner of the internet through that show. So it's very cool to kind of come full circle and be able to contribute to it. Yeah, I don't know. Busy week. Called into work, so I'm a little bit wonky tonight, and it's storming. So we'll see what I'm in for, but I'll do my best to keep up with you guys. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Brother Solar. And I did say this privately. Obviously, all my episodes are my favorite, really, especially with the Lodge. Hello, Sir Tim. No, I'm serious. It like I would have quit in February. I've said this many times, but I definitely would have left. It would have been like, peace out, Nargas. I'm done. But I kept going because I had you guys to cry to tell me that I'm doing a sometimes an okay job, and in Rom's case, to always give me a little electroshock therapy and check my ego. But no, I loved the episode that I did with Sawyer. Like, legit, I loved it. Like, I think it's a great episode, and more for him than me. But I'm also very humbled to host discussions like that, and that we've been having collectively and then individually on all of your episodes. So amazing job, Brother Solar. Thank you so much again. And yeah, cannot say how happy I am. And like, I felt elated this week. Obviously, I will just shout out the episode that I dropped today with Robert Stark, Cosmoplatonism. So basically, I just interviewed him on his Substack article about his new religion, and I think it's a really interesting discussion. And I'm also actually, for a change, quite proud of it. So, in terms of, I think I sounded smart, so that's important to me. And also, what else? That's pretty much it. And so, obviously, tonight's space, I will do a little housekeeping actually. Next week, hello, Cassandra, fellow content creator, Kabbalist, Gnostic, fortune card reader, Etsy store purveyor. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you. And Sir Tim, obviously, I said you, but like our Hawaiian brother, thank you so much for coming. I do really look forward to all of you coming, every single person. Like, every single person. It makes it what it is. So, thank you for being a part of that. And also, okay, next week, really exciting news. On the posters for next week, it will no longer just be at Wukong Reborn. It will actually be hosted by, collectively, the Grey Lodge. And I said this in the chat, but I'm just saying it now because you all deserve it, and you all contribute so much to it. It can't just be me anymore. So that's great. Obviously, I'm still going to give myself some credit because I do host them, but I think it's time to spread it out a little. That being said, next week will be a specific theme, which is all of you guys talk about Graham Hancock and theories of the world and alternative history. And so I thought, this is not my area of speciality, you could say, but maybe it'll be interesting to hear from all of you what your ideas of alternative history are, what your ideas of Papaboria are, and is there any kind of like archaeological sites in the Americas or anywhere in the world that you're particularly interested in? Do you hate Graham Hancock? Do you have lots of criticisms to give him? Well, you can do all of that next week. So I will just be passive, well, maybe not passive, but maybe just a colorful commentator to guide us through that discussion. So really looking forward to that. So archaeologies, I expect all of you to come up with something. No pressure. Okay, so this space tonight was actually inspired by a Howling Mutant tweet. And you might say, cringe, cringe, cringe. And okay, that's fine, cringe. But he actually tweeted something interesting, which was about Superman. So, talking about how the idea of Superman and Kal-El is tied up into some kind of Jewish Ubermensch identity, and yeah, maybe sure that's probably a little bit of it, but we can say in a broader way that it's very Enochian, it's very Adam Kadmon, it's very Adamantine Man, it's very Seth, it's It's kind of the things we talk about. But then I thought, let's extend it more broadly, because obviously Superman is tied into a specific ethnic identity, but it's also American. And American comic books are sort of the epitome of what people think of when you say the word Americana. It's like hamburgers, hot dogs, skateboards. Obviously, the picture for this week is surfing. As you all know, I'm very fond of this, both this activity and this metaphor, because I think it's a really important skill. It teaches you how to sort of decenter your center of gravity and allow you to kind of flow through everything, much like I always say, be like a little more like, at least conceptually, like a dancing bikini, and a little more flexible instead of the rigidity, to help you move through the cycle of time rather than stay fixed or stuck in old paradigms. I don't know, just a little interesting idea. And so, what is the American Adam Kadmon besides Superman? Well, he can be expressed in so many heroes. He can be expressed in all the Marvel heroes, basically, that have been out in the last 80 years. But not every hero is exactly made equal. And Sir Tim brought up something really interesting, which I hope that he brings up next week in our archaeology spaces. But I think he brought up the idea of the culture hero. So he was trying to figure out who are the Nagas in Hawaiian or Polynesian more broadly, or if you want to say really speculatively, you could say the mythologies of Oceania. Yeah, there we go. Oceania. So who are the Nagas in that cosmology? Well, they can be described as many ways, because that's sort of the whole thing. A lot of what Ram and I discuss is who is the dragon. So Buddhism would say the culture hero is also the dragon. They're entwined together. They might not be exactly the same, but there is entwinement, a Hode-like entwinement. If there are three expressions at Hode, the prince, the princess, and the dragon, then it stands to reason that perhaps sometimes the dragon and the prince can be conflated, but they can also be entwined. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of dragon posting, me in particular, but also John. Welcome, John. Our well, I have to be respectful to John, because I realize like he's telling people he's a monk lately. So I kind of sexually harassed John a little, but it was like fully in the joke. But of course, I shouldn't do that. So I apologize to John. But I do love to tease John and make him squirm regardless. So John also has an upcoming episode, and John is also looking for astrology clients. And he is setting up, or has set up, his Ko-Fi / Buy Me a Coffee. So if you are interested, please contact John for astrology services. So, yeah, that's happening. And also, he's going to pass the link around to us, and yeah, we'll share it as far and wide as a monkey's reach can go. So, really looking forward to that. Oh, and John and I are interviewing Ernst Wilhelm very soon, actually, like in a few days. And John also picked the election for that interview. So good job, John. I also told Ernst that, so it wasn't like I pretended like I was Mr. Astrology. I was like, no, Ernst, I am not an astrologer, but I know just the person to bring on to ask you all the right questions. So we're going to be along for the ride, or I'm going to be along for the ride, excuse me. But his wife is actually a tantrika of Sri Vijaya. So I feel like I will actually have plenty to, at least to think about, if not contribute in my own way. So I'll also shout out to Joe Tier Astrology for recommending Ernst. He is the one who said, if you want to interview me, you have to interview Ernst. So, working our way up the ladder. But I'm really excited to interview Ernst, and I think that'll be really great. Welcome, Thaddeus Maximus. A longtime mutual, very treasured. I don't often see you on the timeline, but I often don't see anyone on the timeline, so I hope you don't take it personally. I try and retweet everyone as much as possible. Um, it's only limited time, and but I'm really glad to see you here. Thank you so much. So, Joshua, I'm so sorry. Okay, Joshua, Dr. William Birkin, one of our co-hosts, he is camping. He has a stressful job. I'm not going to say what it is. I don't know if he's discussed it on lives, but he has a very stressful job, and he is taking a moment on his actually vacation. He's using up the last of his vacation. So we say, good job, Joshua. Have fun. Don't get too revelrous. No corpses, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so the new Adam Kadmon. So I am very fascinated by. I think we all are in a degree fascinated by what is American culture. So what is American culture in media? American culture in media is actually very specific. There are specific sites, geosocial sites like the mall, obviously, mall culture. Obviously, that's dead now. Most millennials know that. But there's also like a particular place, and I think that's what I was trying to get at with my, geosocial relationships. Southern California. And this is also why I chose a surfer for today's poster. It is not just that I have a fascination with surfing or as a metaphor, as activity, but I also think that there is something particularly and uniquely American about Southern California. Now, I know Monty and I are both East Coast bros, and proudly so, but I think, well, there is also that same quality in depictions of New York. Now, obviously, not like rom-com stupid films, but in the same era, the 70s, 80s, kind of more grit cinema, you do see both are considered uniquely American experiences. Now, how do you sort of disaggregate those experiences from each other? Well, I think that California is sort of unsung as a hub of culture, but New York is kind of like the agent. It's the tiny hat agent that's gonna sell all your merch. So that's basically what New York is. It's the merchant to the Californian poet, you could say. So both, in a way, yes, Solar, please go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to jump in and say there's kind of an interesting sort of like racial alchemy element. Also as like the token guy from SoCal, and I will probably be relocating back there. If I can stick a few more interviews with the big finance. Actually, no, I don't need to be any more Jewish coded. If I can make it happen, I'm gonna go back there. But anyway, so traditionally, right, and this plays, I mean, explicitly directly into the sort of like comic book side of things that we're going to be talking about maybe a little bit. But in general, right, the Eastern Seaboard and particularly the like sort of metropolitan, excuse me, I can't fucking talk today. The metropolis of New York is the place where people and peoples become American, right? Like that is sort of the baloney processing center, like by and through which peoples come to be formed into Americans and integrated into American culture. But I wanted to, and the West, right, of which California in mythos is kind of like the last horizon of that frontier, right? And for a while, at least in imagery, it sort of retained um, this sort of like strange romantic sort of ethnic purity as such, like the blonde Aryan surfer, so to speak, right, was very much like an extension of the sort of American frontier pioneer experience, this sort of like eugenically selected for white American kind of movement, right? But that is super incomplete, right? Because again, as someone from SoCal, I'm very much aware that California has been Hapaborian for like 130 years, right? Like first with like major Japanese and Chinese like waves of settlement, and now they're like infinitely more and sort of like more diverse waves of Asian American settlement, particularly, right? All sorts of cool, interesting things cooking up there. And so I think that's just interesting because like that isn't a sort of like criminally underrepresented aspect to the sort of like new American racial synthesis that's happening almost exclusively, not entirely, but by and large, like on the West Coast and in California specifically. So just like throwing it out there.
Sorry, I have to cough. Sorry about that. I had a little weak cough. Okay. Yes. So Brother Solar's hitting it exactly where I was trying to go with it, which is this kind of Hyperborean synthesis that is already happening and has been already happening. Obviously, that's not a pun because obviously I am Hapa, and Sir Tim is spiritually Hapa, we'll say, and he hails from the great state of Hawaii. Or I'll do it really Hawaiian. I'll have to do it really Hawaii. So there we go. Try it at least. So that's basically what we're talking about. And interestingly, Monty is from Jersey, and Jersey has a huge population of Kalmyks. I'm sure that's sort of interesting for Solar, is like these northern Tunguskic, Manchurian related ethnicity, and they actually make up a huge population in parts of Jersey. It's one of the most concentrated locations for them, and it's a pretty rare ethnicity outside of Russia and Central Asia. So very interesting. Also, if you've ever heard me speak with the episode with Zuki, who's coming back. Talk about Aeon Flux, but the past episode with Zuki where we talked about Bosazuko and the Japanese motorcycle gangs. I referenced also with Joe Nally, who's also from the San Francisco Bay Area. So obviously he talks about how his version of Hyperborea, I'll say, but it's not really. He's the progenitor, really. Credit to him, but the AXA, Asian Aryanism. Obviously, we give full credit to Joe as like at least the proto Hyperborean synthesizer. I don't know. I think that what they're all talking about is what I've tried to been talking or have attempted to kind of bring in, which is this Asian American politics or Asian American. I'm going to use a dirty word, identity politics. So I used to listen to this show, which is what I was trying to say, called Escape from Plan A. So it's all It's like it was kind of like a dirtbag leftist ish. Asian American specifically podcast, and I listened to it for many years. And you're probably wondering, like, whoa, what are you? You're Hapa, Jin. Like, why are you listening to like some identity politics? Honestly, the identity politics part drove me crazy because they would often veer into that very leftist kind of like we are the Benetton. But where it was really interesting was when they were talking about the political layers of Asian America specifically, because that really doesn't get articulated. And I think it's important to understand that if we're going to think in the broader picture of credit to Brother Solar, metapolitics, or how demographics vote. So I can say, like, for me, my diaspora is quite right wing, or at least conservative. But then there are other ones. So there's the millennial Asian American. They tend to be very boba libtard, right? Not also that even that word boba. I don't know. Maybe some of you know it. Maybe some of you don't. That's okay. But a boba is basically an Asian libtard or a really left wing Asian American who will sort of like go against even their own, I don't know, community. They'll say, "Oh, everybody knew who they were." Anyways, I don't need to rehash that sort of grievance, but they were just people who would speak out in against cause of their own communities, but also of like white people, and they were always married to white people too. So that was always really hilarious and interesting. And shout out to Basil for that. Because he definitely would have said something about that. Okay, yes, Solar, please go ahead.
Yeah. And I don't want to like distract too much kind of from the I don't know, the maybe more like magical elements, but perhaps like we can sort of like get there through maybe like a more mundane discussion. I'd be interested to get your insight specifically on this because I feel like there are sort of like I don't know, sort of threads of particularity that there are actually some like kind of weird incentive structures maintaining those. So like basically what you just said, like yeah, you that's kind of very visible, right? But I'm also thinking I went to public school just for a little bit, right? And so in that public school, I was all the white kids because we were like less than 10%, right? Because it's just Mexican. So the white kids were also sort of grouped in with all the Asian kids, right? But the Asian kids come in a bunch of different flavors, right? So there's like Filipinos and like Viet kids. Then there's like a few like sort of diaspora like Chinese guys. And like so for instance, right, the Filipino kids ended up being they were like the go-betweens between in for like petty criminality between the Mexicans and the whites, right? So there were like literally like there were like opportunities for like moving drugs, for example, right? Because they kind of had this linguistic connection and cultural proximity to the Mexican stuff, right? So for the like the meth labs and the like cartel like brickweed imports, because this was before legalization and stuff like that, right? So like if you were like a hood like flip kid, like you had a vested interest in maintaining a specifically like Filipino identity, right? And not sort of merging into the blob of like Asian American, millennial, whatever. But also like you probably weren't upwardly mobile, right? You were not going to be trying to go be like a tech founder in Palo Alto in in your early 20s, right? Like that was probably not on the cards if you're like selling weed to white kids, you know what I mean? And then similarly, like with the politics, like basically the aftermath of Korea and the Vietnam War, particularly like what we call the Vietnam War, like all those conflicts in like jungle Southeast Asia, is all over the place, like in Southern California, right? Like the third language on like the ATM selection in a lot of in banks, like right around where I grew up, was actually Hmong, right? So it was like English, Spanish, and Hmong. And then Vietnamese would often be like number 4, right? Like those are huge, huge communities. And they tend to have like very specific politics, right? And also to be a lot more sort of insular, right? And they've kind of, this is the last thing I'll say, is like for instance, I up here at a fucking Ren fair in Minnesota, right? There's like a Hmong like booth, right? And they're like doing their ethnic craft thing, right? And they're just like being sort of culturally very visibly Hmong, right? Integrating but also not integrating, like integrating through basically like commercializing and selling their own ethnic identity as such, right? But through the distinctiveness, not as like boba Asians or like Google Americans, but as like Hmong first and foremost. I just thought that was really interesting.
It's incredibly interesting. It's also interesting that you brought up the Hmong, because I actually have some observation / commentary, but I'm gonna let Monty go. He's had his hand up, but I do want to respond to that, Solar, so I'm not negating it at all.
I think that's a very funny story. I was laughing off when I was off the mic, but it's very funny that the sensation of like lower middle class white kids growing up in like becoming Wiggers, the Wigger effect happening to Filipinos, having this like Oriental bent is very interesting. I think that's really cool, actually. But yeah, I just think it's like just kind of like that. There's something to like we were talking earlier about like these cultural centers. For instance, like New Jersey has like this incredible actually diverse population, and it's because like Ellis Island is in New York, quote unquote, but it's actually in New Jersey. Like I can go to the Statue of Liberty and like not ever step over a body of water type deal. But anyway, these like hyper regionalizations all across the country go and like have their own energy and their own weight to them. Like there's no surprise that the Southwest, for instance, is like meth heaven. It like kind of calls to them. There's something about it. Like Florida Man is such a meme because we all like so are aware with what these like weird freaks from the down under in American terms are like. And I just think that every single place has such character to it that makes up the American character. And, to loop it like all the way back to, the topic for this evening, talking about, these kind of like pop Americana, like everything. Superman, I think, is because not only is he like the quintessential hero that we all think of and know of, as the symbol of righteousness. The S on his chest is actually for hope or something. But he was also like a pop art sensation that like captured the minds of like everyone across like the bizarro gonzo United States. I think this is such like a wacky like cartoons and comics are like so American because it just appeals to this like very abstract, foreign, and like weird like pulp style that existed in the 60s. I mean, like futurism and stuff. I think it just has such a stranglehold to this day. Like that, it's art that refuses to go away. But I kind of veered off in 17 different directions there. But I just wanted to chime in.
No, that was honestly great, both of you. Thank you so much. Okay, Matt wants to go. Okay, Matt, please go ahead.
Just want to share something real quick that I seen recently. I'm not much into the DC, like as in reading it. I know obviously the characters and so on, but I saw something recently, which is, I don't know which of the comics or whatever, that Dr. Manhattan tries to remove Superman, or like tries to fuck with Superman in all the multiverses. But he realizes that basically it's almost like the multiverses resolve around Superman. So obviously he's like the solar character to Fred and so on, like makes a lot of sense. But then he tries doing this, and then he goes and like if I'm not mistaken, he like kills Superman's parents and like kills Lois Lane and so on, like tries to break his mind. He gets like super enraged, Superman, and all the other like villains come, and like he's battling all the villains and so on. And it comes to the point where basically he can like kill Dr. Manhattan. So that's like either what happens when he tries to fuck up Superman. Either everything disappears, like all the multiverses disappear, or he gets killed by Superman. In theory, right? That's what he's future seeing. But then when it comes to it, Superman actually stops like another guy from killing Dr. Manhattan, and then he asks like, well, what the fuck, like why did you do this after I tried destroying you, and so on and so on and so on. And he basically says that like at that moment Dr. Manhattan needed him. So like he was, again, this, like Monty was saying, this kind of symbol of hope and so on, and again very theoretic. By, if I'm not mistaken, right, Superman gets his power from the sun or something. So again, very, very blatant theoretic, and no wonder why he's the most famous and most known. Again, it's basically how you create any religion, right? You need the theoretic element there. So it's just very coincidental that I saw this like this week. Wanted to chip in.
Isn't it interesting that like all the DC characters have that Gevra Hesed sort of like red and blue synthesis? Even Thor, even to a degree Doctor Strange. I don't know. It's interesting. You can definitely see different preferences in the Kabbalistic undertones between Marvel and DC. Yes, Solar, please go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a quick question, right? Because I'm only vaguely familiar with the concept of the sort of like comic book multiverses, and it's my understanding that they kind of go through these cycles of like going crazy, and then they'll find some way to sort of collapse it and bring it back and reset the books or whatever every few years. But is it true to any extent at all? This is just kind of based on what Matt said, that Superman either exhibits less variation across his sort of various instantiations in the multiverse than other characters, or perhaps even does he remain sort of completely constant? I'm just trying to like, ask to what degree he represents like a more sort of fixed element within this kind of motif of sort of like infinite speculative variety.
Yeah, that's a great question. Is he an eternalist figure? Is he a transmutational figure? Okay, Monty, please go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to address the Superman and like the different iterations and the different multiverses. So Superman is only perverts fuck with him. Like in the New 52 is when they went and tried to make him, this very like Homelander ass character, and like that's why he's lampooned across like basically every single like. How do I say this? Every single like clone or like adult quote unquote superhero show. But the thing is that like Superman is so like pure, and he's so the difference between Batman and Superman is malevolence versus benevolence. And it's Superman is always good every single time. And every single time, whenever you go and see like imitation or like multiverses of Superman like being bad or being evil. One, that's why they have Bizarro, and two, it's like he always redeems himself and becomes like the Ubermensch, for lack of a word again. And I just think that like Superman is such an indelible character in like. I'm glad that the movies haven't gone and like done a good job of capturing who he is yet, because I think so much of his character is based off of like the comics, like goodness and justice. Like he stands as a figure on a page stronger than anything else. But excuse me, I'm rambling.
Not at all. That was great. It gave me a lot to discuss. Okay, yes, Solar, please go ahead.
No, I'm sorry for asking all the insultingly stupid questions, but I'm sure that anyone else who doesn't have any kind of a background in this medium will maybe appreciate like the grounding a little bit, because they'll have similar questions. So at a sort of like brass tacks fundamental level, both Superman and Batman have sort of like tragic backstories, right, involving the death of like both of their parents, or the planet, I guess, right, for Superman. So there's this element of like, I guess maybe in the most charitable interpretation, like uh Batman is this character who's sort of like bent toward malevolence to the extent that he cannot sort of like liberate himself from the the sort of nails driven into his heart by personal tragedy and sort of contingent like thrownness, right? Whereas it seems to be like key to Superman's character that he is, he creates the sort of opportunity for free benevolent action by not being defined by this personal tragedy to some extent, right? That seems to be like a thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that case has been made. Batman is the Klipothic character. I think that makes sense. He's going down into the womb. I know that was a big discussion in the group chat today about the infernal cave. He's going deeper and deeper, and he likes the darkness. He is the not the grandmaster of demonic cultivation, because he's not really cultivating the Sephirotic qualities. He's really cultivating the Klipothic one. So yeah, and I agree with that. And there's something very Hasidic to Superman in general, and just his benevolence and his also in his ability to overcome his tragedy. So I agree with what Solar said. Yes, Monty, please go ahead.
Sorry, don't want to be a ball hog. I just wanted to chime in and say that yes, Batman is a pervert who refuses to let go of his tragedy and let it define him, while Superman quite literally transcends and like overcomes. And there's a reason why Batman comics sell more. But yeah.
Yes, Solar, please go ahead.
Well, I mean, not to make any kind of broad statement about perverts who can't let go of tragedy, but Batman is canonically Jewish, right? I mean,
No,
I know the Batwoman, but I thought they're not related, because I know the one is like she's like a Jewish dyke, right? So I figured they had to
Batgirl
be.
is the daughter of Jim Gordon, who's the commissioner of Gotham City. No, it's no.
Damn it! All right, never mind. I retract everything. Hashem forgive me.
Okay, well, we will continue the discussion on Superman in 1 second. I'm going to do a shout outs. Ashley, Think Change Repeat from Union of Unknowns, thank you so much for coming. My longtime friend, her episode's coming up very soon. Thank you so much. Bibliomancer, thank you so much for coming. Mansion Roller, thank you so much for coming. And Nokian, thank you so much for coming. Also, okay, so I did want to say something to Solar about I don't know if this is a direct response to what he was trying to ask, but there is a kind of hierarchy. So East Asians obviously are the top. Now it depends on who you ask. Like, what East Asian are you asking is the top, and where are they from? So like a Honger is going to obviously say ethnic Chinese, Hong Kong is the best, right? So people from the Southeast Asian diaspora who are also ethnic Chinese, they are either going to identify strongly with their home country, and I think that is also interesting in terms of like Lee Kuan Yew. He always gets brought up, right, on like our side or whatever even that is anymore, but like our side of Twitter. And it's like, do we really want like surveillance state fascism? I don't know. It doesn't sound that great. But there are some interesting ideas that look, Southeast Asia has been Eurasian for 600 years almost. It's just the reality. Eurasian culture is kind of the culture of Oceania. I think Sir Tim has been commenting fierily in the chat about this, and yes, I totally agree. Like the Silk Road was, as we've talked about many times, the Silk Road was not just Central Asia. The Silk Road was maritime, and this was also the place of transmission for Tantra. It's just the truth. And so there is a sort of a movement, a cycle, a wave that pushes towards the west coast of California, towards the coast of California. So I just think that's interesting. Yes, Solar, please go ahead.
I just wanted to like clarify like mimetic language for people who maybe aren't like autistically involved in like right-wing Twitter to like sort of understand this, right? Because Lee Kuan Yew has been like decontextualized and sort of like horribly flattened out. So there are two principal ideas associated with like his sort of pseudo veneration on right-wing Twitter. One of those is the implication that an authoritarian surveillance state is the necessary outcome to maintain order in a multi-ethnic, multiracial society, right? So the sort of like Lee Kuan Yew endpoint is sort of a threat that is implied to loom over the future demographic sort of trends in the West, right? So he's evoked for that reason. The second reason, and this is maybe more optimistic, is he's a figure that is seen as independent of any sort of like ideological, particularly like partisan baggage, right? Like, hey, what if we like weren't interested in LARPing as like NSDAP, or we didn't want to LARP as like Bronze Age like Marble Men, right? Like, what if we just wanted to sort of like pragmatically approach like problem solving, right? So he's kind of this like extension of Anglo/American pragmatism in sort of conservative reactionary whatever those sort of like right-wing politics, right? So that's kind of a positive thing. But the other thing is just like it's a commentary on demographics as destiny.
Right. That, you see, I never read that history from really that lens. So thank you, Solar. Even it was illuminating even for me. But I do understand the context from which that arises, because obviously I've been reading all those people for a long time. I do think it's been decontextualized. I think that I couldn't have said it better. So that also goes along with it. There's this idea in Asian American, to sort of parallel what Solar was saying, there's an idea in Asian American politics that the closer to whiteness or the closer to Westernness, I think that's actually a more interesting construct. The closer to Westernness you are in custom and habit, the more agential sort of you are, and the less fixed in that motherland identity. So yes, it's like I'm going to reference one of my favorite films. I have done like a film review on this if you're interested. Big Trouble in Little China, and Egg Shen is asked by Jack at the end of the movie, like, "Are you gonna go to China?" And Egg Shen goes, "No, China's in the heart, Zach, or Jack, excuse me." And yeah, that's kind of that is kind of like that is the idea. Like Jinshan, like Gold Mountain, the Golden Mountain. It's very Mormon, right? Like that is California. That California is like the place of apotheosis, and the apotheosis of the diaspora is to be American. It's not to be like longingly aching for a woman that you've never known. It's to be part of the greater project. So it is interesting, because I do think that a lot of Asian Americans are sort of like identified with very shitty politics, but I don't necessarily think that it is. I think it's been largely misunderstood. That's my personal opinion, obviously. Yes, Monty, please go ahead.
So I've talked about this on previous spaces, but there's something to be said about how the American identity is still like a relatively new one. 250 years is like not that long in terms of the history of everything, and so there's this idea, like, this, like, this new land that we discovered that has these, big ideas. They rebelled against, the old world, and like created the new world for, the indigenous side. And there is something to this. I mean, anybody who's looking at the current administration and how they're handling everything that they championed. I mean, Epstein news aside, which like could be a lolcow, I don't care. Like that's your judgment. That's fine. But just how like the bungling of absolutely everything of the stuff that matters. Like we all got the JD Vance finger wag at Zelensky, but we're giving them more missiles. Like everything is smoke and mirrors, and we all fell for it. And anyone who's looking at that and thinking that like this is still like the cool idea, no, Japan actually has a better idea of what America is, and it's see you space cowboy, where you're smoking cigarettes and you're like being cool. The future has to be in a new identity that we can chase towards. It doesn't have to be a new land. I think that the internet is the new world, and coalitions and spaces like this, coming together over shared interests across the entire world, is something that needs to be celebrated. And I think Hapaboria is the perfect name because, quite frankly, these are the people who are interested in these things. But yeah, so long live, 1,000 years.
Yeah, long live 1,000 years. I totally agree. It is transcendent. To speak with people over space and time from all over the world who are interested in interesting ideas that are based in metaphysics but are open to other, modes of view. So let me do a couple room shout outs. Tweet upon. Thank you so much for coming. Brother Shin Dingbat. Brother from the lodge, thank you so much for coming. Our Henshin brother, hopefully his episode is coming up. We have General Lee. Good night. Hello, General Lee. How are you doing? Obviously, I did my 11-part Tantra and Kabbalah series on General Lee's show, so that was the genesis of my podcasting quote-unquote career. So thank you to Lee. We have Bold, Brave, Free. Avi, thank you so much for coming. It's never quite the same without you, and I'm so glad you were able to make it. Obviously, you make it almost every night, so thank you so much. Zachary Shumar. Zachary Shumar, one of my co-hosts, my favorite dudes from the Tracy Twyman series. Transformational, very interesting. Very proud of the work we did, even if it was in my more amateur days. I feel like it was definitely a place of growth, a place to sort of. It's something I will always look back on and say that was a transformation. So thank you so much, Zach. And obviously, Zach's welcome on any time. And we also did Don Da Da. So obviously, that ties in a lot to the ideas of Hapaboria and what we're talking about, which is American identity. Yes, Solar and Matt, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna sort of like quickly make the point that I'm sort of hopeful that we will be able to move beyond political realities and political necessity is doing this horrible violence to like what I would consider like the sort of like diverse trajectories of sort of Asian and Asian American sort of integration and sort of cultural flourishing, right? Because we've, again, sort of for social and political convenience, we've sort of created this meta category of like Asian, right? Or Asian American. And we've sort of carved out a little sort of like racial niche sort of within one of the two like major parties, right? Which sort of makes sense, right? Because overwhelmingly, the Asian American population clusters in large cities that are controlled by the Democratic Party, usually in blue states, right? So this all kind of makes sense, right? But the quote unquote like Asian experience doesn't exist, right? Asian American culture doesn't really exist. It's sort of being created, sort of after the fact, right? Like that's sort of like one of the things that like Pill Eater is constantly riffing on, right? But for me, I can't really say too much about it, but I was deeply involved in some older vestiges of Japanese American culture, and knew kind of families who had been in California a very long time. growing up, right? And that predate the sort of civil rights era creation of Asian American as a political identity, right? As a sort of mystery meat baloney identity of political convenience. And I'm hopeful that perhaps the death of that sort of political regime will allow for a return to a sort of like more organic and sort of diverse and interesting sort of trajectory of development for those communities to sort of find their own manners of articulation and expression.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said, Solar. There is a kind of American identity, a Hapaborean identity, perhaps. And I agree with what Monty said. Like, they're all failing us. Like, who cares? Like, I'm like, let's just be post political. Let's just like speak to each other. And who are these people? Like, both truth accounts and like quote unquote influencers. Like, what are they even saying? Is it interesting? Mostly, no. Mostly, it's actually really like that's Zogslop. And that's not even of the implication, and that's not even on the right. That's both. That's like the crazy like 300 follower accounts that get like 20. I'm not saying that's Monty has been slogs away. I'm saying that there sometimes there are weird waves in the algorithm that will boost a weird leftist, like very fringy opinion that suddenly gets like 300,000 likes, and you're like, are there 300,000 like people that believe this on Twitter? Like, where are they? There aren't. And so you just know that it's all inflammatory, it's all provocational. It's it's very Kabbalistic, obviously, because it's to capture your attention, a spark, maybe you could say, that you want to quote tweet. You want to break that klipa, but are they even klipas? Are they just, shiny objects before you? I don't know. Okay, Matt, I know you've been waiting forever. I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Yeah, those are all fake. All the numbers are fake on social media and the internet. You should never trust them. And if they make you want to, do something crazy, just rethink how much of what you're seeing is actually true in your reality. So, but what I was actually going to say. So while Monty was talking about, I don't remember exactly what he was talking about, but I was thinking about this. So it's interesting. Oh, okay, I remembered of this like idea that America is new, right? So it's quite a new place and so on. And it's interesting because Brazil is also a pretty new place, and also like Monty was saying, it's very hard to define even what like Brazilian is, because it's so funny because, for example, every time that I say I'm Brazilian, people in Europe will say, "Oh, but like you don't look Brazilian," because I guess they're imagining some, I don't know, very differently colored skin and so on. But yeah, it's fine. I understand why they think this way, but it's this thing where it's like the new world. A lot of people went there, tried to build this new thing. So like both Brazil and America, and then now you have this kind of mixture. For we'll call the mutts. You have now this all mixtured places and cultures and everything, and that's actually such a beautiful thing because now it's where all the synthesis came up. So I think I couldn't not have chosen a better place to be born than like either Brazil or the States. I think Brazil is even cooler because you get to be born as kind of like the underdog. So you're always like trying to, do something. You're always trying to be best at something because like you're kind of fucked up already. But it's interesting idea that what if, so just like back in the 1500s, people discovered new earths, let's say. What if we discovered new earths now? And I agree with Monty that the internet is kind of like this already. We're like going to the new, like a more subtle level. So we're like building bridges that we couldn't before. We are connecting with people that would be much harder to connect with before. And it's, again, it's a whole new thing, but much more accelerated because also things change all the time. Like you have, a specific platform will die off or change names and change how it behaves and so on. So you have to like navigate through all of this. And I think it's a very interesting thing that you have to basically build things on the fly. And in a way, I get why it seems to me that less and less things will be centralized, as in like there will be someone holding, this is the truth or this is what we should be doing uh, sign, but more so it will kind of force people into seeing what they actually need for their life, what they actually believe in and so on. And because of how just the universe works, that they'll kind of converge into somewhere. Like the internet will facilitate this, right? So it's not going to be, oh, I'm going to believe this because I saw in a group, but like I believe this already, and a group forms around everything that I believe because other people also believes in this, and we all came to this in a way by ourselves, but also there's obviously all the different matrix traps here and there, but that's fine. We break those. But yeah, I was thinking about this while Monty was saying.
Well, it is interesting because I did do the series on Ralph Bakshi, which obviously ties in a lot to Jewish immigrant identity. So I don't understand that kind of thing, but there is an idea in it, similar to the Chinese example I gave, where maybe the identity that's being broken is that sort of like, quote unquote, what is known on right wing Twitter as the third world mindset. So I do think that is a thing. Like a village, I always joke in our chat, like village sorcerer mindset. If that's like the most common approach to magic or Thurgy or Vajrayana, or it's just like I'm just going to do what I want to get what I want. Maybe the greater approach is more of this synthetic, syncretic, but single pointed, Hyperborean approach that we're, I think, talking about right now. Yes, Solar, please go ahead.
Cool. We just sort of like brought two threads together. Let me see if I can kind of bridge a gap here. So one of the more interesting, I don't know, dimensions of sort of Asian American integration, but also non-integration for me that I was directly exposed to was what we'll call East Asian evangelicism, right? So I was deep. I grew up in a nominally Christian home, but attached to like Christian like primary education institutions and stuff like that. And I had like in my home, like as au pairs and stuff, uh, like Japanese and Korean like women who were deeply involved in evangelical churches, right? And some of which were totally American churches with just a heavy skew towards East Asian like congregants, but others never like the actual Moonies, but churches like that. There are a lot of sort of smaller ones like that. And so one of the interesting things that I observed is one, there's an insane degree of syncretism because they and again I'm speaking in huge generalizations here, but it seems like they don't have the sociological box of this is a religious or spiritual belief. There's just a lot of sort of cultural accretions that are just like, oh, that's just what we do. Things that maybe as like Westerners we would consider, oh, well, this is magic, or these are spirits, or these are like deities or something, like these little like lucky cats or buddhas or dragons, like what the fuck are those? Well, those get a free pass if you're like Chinese Christian in Southern California. That's just like, oh, that's just part of the thing, right? um and so there's inherently this kind of like folk cultural practice, including a lot of sort of like low magic things that just get like baked into the cake, which I think is really interesting. However, this also kind of parallels something I've observed, again, very roughly, in even like Southern European immigrant communities, Eastern European immigrant communities in my time on the East Coast, because I lived in New York for 15 years. There's a certain earthiness to the focus of a lot of those communities. It's a lot of people lifting each other up, volunteering for service, but very much like the things that they're praying for are like meat and potatoes, financial stability, praying that auntie so and so ends up, getting this job. It would be a huge thing for her family, shit like that, right? There seems to be much less emphasis placed on sort of the process or prospect of individual transcendence in a way that we're fond of talking about that kind of in our milieu, right? So, and to me, that's something where it seems like if we want to like map that onto the tree, it's like we've kind of we're setting our sights lower. Like Tiferet is maybe the highest that we're even interested in thinking about going, right? Which is too bad. But then again, there are all these sort of interesting sort of syncretic elements of cultural support, magical practice. There's a lot going on, like positives and negatives in my view. I don't know. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
No, I mean that's exactly what the space is about. Like I wasn't planning to do like a Plan A episode, but like I'm all for it. I'm here for it. Like this is what I wanted to start podcasting, talking about Asian America, weird Asian America. But obviously we're doing it in a more syncretic, synthetic way. Hapaboria. So I think everything you said, Solar, was really interesting. Like look, Asians are naturally syncretic. But Tantra is also naturally syncretic, and so what Solar's saying is true. I think for most people, I think most people are not praying like despite what even the most hardcore like right-wing ortho bros are saying. I'm not always sure that your prayers are 100% pristine, and also that also goes for pagan Twitter as well. And like, I'm sorry, pagan Twitter, the things are like, the reality is that one of the reasons I don't like them, and I've never said this before, but I'm going to say it right now, is I just think multiplicity is not, how can multiplicity be single pointed? I would just, for me, there's a logical paradox there. So I'm more, I think that the Adi Buddha is the primordial. So, or the Vajradhara. I'm comfortable with both. And so, but it's not necessarily a singular figure, but that's not necessarily not existing in multiplicity either. It's single pointed. So, for me, it doesn't make sense. But you know what? Do what you want. Do you will. So. But yeah, absolutely. So I can speak for Koreans. Maybe you'll be surprised to hear this since the rise of like K-pop and Korean cinema and all this. But like when I was growing up, Koreans were kind of considered the inferior cousin. No offense, any Korean, but I'm being I'm being serious as well. As like they were not considered to be acculturated. They weren't considered to be educated or mobile or any of those things. It was like a very third world immigrant kind of coding. And so definitely Filipinos, like I think we brought them up a little bit, and like Sir Tim said, yeah, they are culturally and by proxy Mexicans of Asia for sure. They're very syncretic. They had Chinese presence was like since the 1100s. They had a Tamil presence since the like 1100s. They had Hindu kingdoms. They had animist kingdoms. They had Chinese kingdoms. They had Chinese pirates. They had Japanese settlements, Dutch settlements, Portuguese settlements. So a very syncretic place. People who are not exactly what people think they are, right? Like there's a lot of people with substantive European descent, also Aztec and Mayan descent. And you'd be like, well, that's really crazy. It's actually not if you understand like the Spanish caste system. They deliberately intermix populations. Now, could you say they had like some Kalergi plan scheme or whatever? I'm sure that's what people will think. But for me, it's more Kabbalistic, moving pieces on a chessboard, synthesizing where you can, bringing points of contact. Maybe they were perennialists. So they were kind of rectifying like a much older system. I don't know. There's something kind of interesting about looking at it like that. Um, okay, so Asian American. So obviously, Japanese have the best kind of popular culture. I think we all kind of agree. Although I do have to say, I rep for I love a Chinese manga or manga. I'm sorry, Monty. I love a Chinese manga or a manhwa, and I also love Douyin, like a Chinese animated film. And so, hey, Mario, symbolic studies, Mario. So you're probably gonna think what we're talking about tonight is rather strange, but we're talking about like Hapaboria and synthetic kind of like cultural identities, pop cultural, and among other things, Asian American. So, welcome though, and thank you for coming. Yeah, Japanese have the best, but they also are a very subtle people. And I think we know this because we have obviously Akiko from the Lodge, Shakti, and they're just a very subtle people. rather than we are. Obviously Chinese are loud, brash, they're very traders, especially southern Chinese. They love a word game. Monkey King is like the clan god, and so they're it's loud, brash, but that's also like very New York in a way, right? Like there's all these elements of parallels, you could say. And so like there's a lot of Taiwanese that live in at least relative to the area that Solar's talking about in the San Gabriel Valley. Taiwanese are very subtle also. Like they're kind of both. They're kind of gangsters, but they're also kind of a subtle people. They're a little bit more Japanese, you could say, among Chinese, especially among the Western Chinese. And so they will often speak perfect English. So you have these kinds of different populations that more reflect the sort of Anglo populations around them. I think that's also true for like the Taiwanese and like the WASP community, and that's also a point of synthesis. And Southern California, as Solar correctly pointed out, has been a point of synthesis since the Spanish came and built the pueblos. So like to discount it and say like it's only America if these racial preconditions are met, I'm just not sure that is the fullness of the story. Yes, Matt, please go ahead.
You just mentioned the Thai, and I have to say something very interesting happened. So I watched this series on Netflix. It's called, I think, Mad Unicorn. It's like based on a real story about the first unicorn startup of Thailand. Not going to spoil, but basically, to me, two things were very interesting. Again, the Kabbalah of it, right? Like, because they use the name of the company is like Thunder something. It's like Thunder Delivery or whatever. So again, very kabbalistically, like he sees they're like in a boat and they're like seeing the storm and they're going with the boat towards the storm or something like this, and then he gets the idea for the name. But also something that I found, which is the main point, is the writing in Thai, like the script, right, for the writing. It's, to me, it's so like kabbalistic because you have like circles and the connections, like the lines to the other things, right? I think Korean is also like this, but to me it felt like the Taiwan has, I don't know, it felt more kabbalistic. I cannot explain exactly the difference between the two, but just seeing, because I was seeing the signs and whatever, right? It was shot there in Thailand. And it was so interesting to see like how, again, because I was also listening to it in the original language, and how they were speaking and the things that were written, how it kind of influences, again, how you may think about certain things and so on. So it would make a lot of sense to me that, like you were saying, Thai has probably like a better navigation, let's say, through things, just because the way they use the Kabbalah of stuff.
Okay, so let's talk about Thailand for a second. I've brought it up on some old space. I cannot remember. Obviously, one of our lodge spaces. I can't remember if it was Aeon of the Daughter or one of the Happabori spaces. But anyways, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to say it again. So I apologize for all who remember, but I'm saying it for those who don't. Thailand is a very syncretic country. Like when people think of Thailand, they're not thinking of Thailand. They're thinking of contemporary borders Thailand. That's not Thailand like pre 1750. That was like a completely different country with a different set of ethnic rulers, different borders, different culture, different language. Okay, the Thailand of now is highly Chinese. In fact, the king and the queen of Thailand are both substantively ethnic Chinese, as is the capital Bangkok, was built by Hokkien traders. So the old capital of Thailand is Ayutthaya, which is a far southern capital, making them much more culturally Malay. They weren't Muslim, but they practice the Theravadan / animistic Buddha of the area, and also Hindu at one point. Or like it's not really like that. Like Southeast Asian Buddhism hyphen or / Hinduism, however you want to denotate it, it's not really either or. It's kind of both. Now this makes sense at a tantric level. This doesn't necessarily make sense at a superficial level. But you could understand how both cosmologies can incorporate like the broader range of spirits, beings, not necessarily ontological gods, but like yakshas. I think that everybody would know them by like fairies, like things like that. That would be that would be perfectly fine in a Buddhist cosmology to have a relationship with the land and the land protectors around you. Very normal. That's what, even the burning of cedar, that is something so Native American in particular, but it's also like extremely Tibetan. Like to do sang offering with cedar tips, or to volcanoes, or to the wind gods, or to a local protector, to the mountain gods. Yes, Solar, please go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to mention one of the reasons that that what we now call like Thai Theravadan practice, it has this kind of like unique flavor and texture to it, or like one of the principal reasons is, as far as I understand it, they got BTFO'd pretty hard. I believe it was in the 17th century they were invaded by Burma, and as part of the sort of conquest and subsequent political and social domination, most of their sort of like religious sites, like monasteries and temples, were destroyed. They lost access to a lot of texts, and particularly their sort of elite, like the, you know, the abbots and the sort of like professional religious class at the time, was basically destroyed, or at least like prevented from earning a livelihood in that field, and so they kind of trickled out and did other things. And sort of because of that, there was this like an increasing emphasis on, or basically practices were not sort of like quote unquote modernized and standardized in a way that they were across a lot of other you know, Southeast Asian countries, and just countries in general, right, as we sort of transition to the modern era. I know Thailand did have their own kind of Theravadan sort of hyper-textualist reformation, like in the early 20th century. It sort of started in the late 19th and then sort of culminated in the early 20th century. But even that like is an incredibly late sort of point of, you know, articulation, right, in the development of that history. And so you have like, yeah, animistic practices sticking around and proliferating for a much longer period of time than you did in other Theravadan countries that maybe started to crack down and standardize those things out of existence centuries before, right? And that's, again, you have like this sort of the very famous Thai forest tradition, right? Like it wasn't just that, oh, the Thai are these uniquely spiritual Theravadan people or whatever, but it was also like, well, there's like one monastery where there used to be 10. And so like out of necessity, like there are just other types of practices that don't require that sort of institutional support that have taken its place, right? And that just kind of makes them unique and interesting and cool, at least from my perspective.
No, Southeast Asia is an incredibly interesting place to discuss. And it is, I just did an episode with A Wayward Cloud, if you follow him, a very keynote poster, on his experience as a student of a famous monk in Thailand, as a Thai forest monk. So a very cool discussion. I think Solar will really like it. Yes, Solar, please, or not Solar, excuse me, sorry. Monty, please go ahead.
First off, I just want to say the episode with the Wayward Cloud is probably the most. I'm so excited for that. He is legitimately a genius, and anyone who has the privilege of following him, because he's a locked account now, he has a great podcast called Kurtcast. Regardless, there is. Yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to shout that out. I'm just like very excited for that. I'm very. I think it's such a, like a cool cross.
I told him that, Monty. I said, you know, I have a mutual that's going to be so excited for this interview, and I said it's going to be Monty, and he's like, really? And I was like, yeah. And then there you go, and so you gave me proof. So thank you so much, Monty. Oh, am I expected to keep going? Okay, I apologize. No, so I think this is all very interesting, just how. Okay, so I want to talk about Witsa. So you're like, what are Witsa? Witsa are Lursi. So if you're familiar with the Pali to Sanskrit sort of divisions and why there's a division in between Theravadan, sort of like the Pali textual readings, the suttas, versus like the more Mahayani, like the, you know, the psychedelic, as I called it in a recent episode, sutras, and then obviously going into the Pranaparamita textual category, which is very psychedelic, very magical. And of course, tantrics like me believe that you can also discern different layers of meaning from the text. Just those texts alone. All you need are pranaparamita texts. And from those, you can actually derive tantras. So it could be theoretically possible to take the Pranaparamita Sutras and completely devise new tantras. I'm not saying to do that. I'm not saying I can do that. I can't do that. I'm just saying for conceptually, it's an interesting way to think about it. That you can take a sutra, a normative Buddhist text, and sort of convert it or translate it, maybe is a better word. So Witsa are Lursi, meaning that they're Thai forest. They're not quite monks. They're maybe practitioners of Abhacharya, village black magic. They could also be these kind of holdover tantrics. So Burma has a long-standing tradition of these Witsa, which are also wizards. So there actually might be an etymological relationship between those two words. There's some conjecture that there isn't, but I think speculatively we will just say for fun, at least, Hapaborean, we'll say, okay, so Witsa is someone who's a Mahasiddha or a great accomplished master. We talked about in the chat Quicksilver. Well, it's very interesting because this is exactly what I was referring to. In the Witsa Tantras, well, I'm calling them Tantras. They wouldn't necessarily call them Tantras, but they are magical palm leaf spell texts, so basically Tantras. They talk about this Quicksilver Marga, this Quicksilver path. And sometimes they're written in Burmese, sometimes they're written in Sanskrit, sometimes they're written in these kind of uh, other colloquial scripts that are both derived from Sanskrit, but then also heavily Sanskritized. So there's this interesting dialogue kind of that's happening, kind of like a tantric dialogue. So I personally, if you want to talk deep politics for a second, maybe think Burma is a much bigger or more interesting or more sort of nexus point of a lot of this kind of you could say, Reformation, which did coincide, interestingly, with the Jesuits. I'm just saying, just as on a material, if you're going to say, like, where all the magic goes underground, like the Jesuits did go to Vietnam in the 1550s. They've had a regional presence there for many hundreds of years. It's a big part of Southeast Asian culture is Catholicism, whether you are Catholic or not. It just is like it's a presence, you could say. Maybe it's not like a central focus, but it's a presence in the region, and it's a presence culturally as well. And what was I going to say about that? Well, I don't even know if that's interesting, but I just think what Solar was saying, there's kind of this Thai identity now that is based around what is shown on Bangkok TV or like Thai TV. And it sort of has gone through these nexus points of like cool, not cool, cheesy, because Southeast Asian media is pretty cringe, to be honest. I'm not saying that pejoratively. I'm just saying it like objectively. It's not even cool by like a ironic like hipster bro like thing. Like you can't be like, yeah, it's like B movie quality. No, it's like just bad. So I'm not saying everything. I'm just there's a large portion of popular culture that's just bad. So I think though there is a kind of they always want to be American. And I think that I'm going to tie it back to Tantra, I promise, and Burma and Thailand. Thailand's always been a place for the Americans. It was always the most open to the West. It was where a lot of the sort of gender surgeries, I'm just talking in reality, is that well, a lot of them were pioneered there. You had during the Vietnam War, obviously, you had that as the number one base, plus the Philippines for GIs going abroad or like taking leave. So you do have this kind of pervading culture, and we know through spam. I'm talking about the meat, also very Hawaiian. Obviously, because Hawaii is very Asian. Like you want to talk about a Hapaborea within America, not only Southern California, but also like the physical borders of the islands of Hawaii. And Sir Tim was tweeting it, but I also was thinking it, but I'm going to credit him anyway because those are there's something true, like at least relatively true about those formations. Are they less American? I wouldn't say that. A lot of Hawaiians serve in the military. I wouldn't say that there's like necessarily this huge dichotomy. I think that people are much different than the polarities. I think that we are perhaps not. So I think what I was trying to say with this Burma Thai sort of Quicksilver tantric undercurrent is that it's obvious in all kinds of tantra that there are these kinds of secret margas or secret paths within the deeper layers, and then they're kind of lost and forgotten, and so what is kinds of comes together. So you could say solar that it bubbles through or percolates through folk magic. Obviously there is a degree of truth to that, and there's also a large percentage of modern magicians who are very interested especially in kimbanda. I'm not going to name them, but people can. We've talked about it before, so it's not really a huge secret, but there's a lot of American and not just American, Scandinavian, Australian magicians who are very interested in Kimbanda. I'm personally very interested in Vajrayana. There's also a group of American magicians who are and always have been interested in Vajrayana. So it's like really the nexus of synthesis, just like how Tantra was originally sort of percolated, you could say, through folk magic, but you could also say it's part of the primordial system. And it's like through these points of synthesis, very solar, very of the sun, that we come into like focus if we can, but we cannot grasp the seed that arises. Okay, yes, solar, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just want to raise the point too of like, I don't know, because you already took a shot at pagans, the sort of like multiplicity, right? And I also wanted to say that, you know, there's so just for the record, there's kind of that split between this sort of like Neoplatonic wing of the right wing neo pagans, and then there's the more like Reconstructionists that I think are the targets of that sentiment. And sort of on that note, right, and sort of trying to tie this to sort of like the layers of the sort of like racial question, right? Like for Evola, and I follow Evola because I think he's 1,000% right on this, right? Like you have the sort of like biological strata of race, the cultural strata of race, and then ultimately, by far and away, the most important is the spiritual strata of race, right? And what we mean at that level of differentiation is basically the interest in and capacity for self-transcendence, right? And ultimately like for supra-personal, supra-human attainment, right? And so it kind of connecting these two things. One of the funny things is like as a white dude, as an Aryan man, you know, in Southern California, there are Buddhas, like physical, like Buddha statues around all the time. Like in my own family's like home, you know, stuff that was brought back from Vietnam, etc. Right? But then also like I have tons of Asian or Hapa friends, you know, so I'm picking it all up from them. I saw about 1 million Buddhas in my life before I ever saw a Thor. Yeah, in fact, I don't think I've ever seen a Thor. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like what is actually indigenous to me, like sure, I guess if you like go by what 23andMe says, right? If you go by the sort of like, sort of linguistic history of the language I'm speaking in a very particular way, okay, sure, we're going back to like Northwestern Europe. But I'm not saying that there's no place for that, or that doesn't matter. Like that sort of strata of things is real, right? But in terms of like what I am actually the product of, right, as a white dude from Southern California, right, like this sort of the sort of not just the cultural sort of accretions that actually surround me, but also the sort of possibilities that I can seek for transcendence and the people like from whom I might learn and sort of participate with in activities that are aimed at superpersonal attainment, i.e., initiatic traditions, right? A lot of those are legitimately like either Dharmic or otherwise sort of East Asian, things like that. And those things are a lot more real, a lot more present, a lot more quote unquote sort of indigenous to me in reality, right? Than any kind of, hypothetical sort of reconstructed and frankly imported like Northwest Germanic like paganism or anything like that, right? Like that is comically remote from me compared to Buddhism, Taoism, everything that I actually kind of grew up around, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Matt go really quick. I'm sorry, Matt, I have to. No, that is a great point, Solar. Thank you so much for saying that. Yes, I think the culture is what is indigenous. It can transcend the passage through time, and so like for me too, I've seen a million Buddhas. I never really thought, oh, I'm gonna be like serious about it. I'm gonna like say it in public. I'm gonna say it out loud. And it's not that I was like against it. I just never really considered it. I was just like, oh, okay. Saw it like, yeah, it's part of like something else. But you know, it's not like it's like a vessel that I can sort of put to the side for a moment and say, I don't know, I want to explore other things. But then I came back to it because I was like, this is how to amend the things that I felt could be amended and the way to do it. So I agree. I think that there is something very axial about Dharma, and also interesting to know China, the Middle Kingdom, considered to be, that would be, so California would be considered east of China. Like we always say, true east is true east. Well, I don't know. It's interesting. Okay, Matt, please go ahead.
Yeah, just something interesting to note while Solar was speaking about the spiritual race, right? So as we were talking about like Hyperborea, the Amerikan Adam, Kadmon, and so on. So I think the guys from Theosophy did a really good synthesis. I wouldn't say they created this, but they synthesized it pretty well. This idea of the like spiritual races, right? So having this kind of it's again basically it's the cycles we go through like astrologically, and then it's the rays as well, like the color, the ray colors, and so on. So it's nothing necessarily new, but it's an interesting idea that we have this kind of race that guides the cycle, and it's not a physical race. It's not like a group of people literally physically, but it's this mental, this like more abstract race that people will kind of connect to. And if they don't, let's say the people that don't either get left behind, let's say they're not playing the same game, so they get left behind, or they have a hard time. So it's a very interesting thing that we again keep doing this on these spaces, that we are basically not just looking into what's in the game right now, but already looking forward and being prepared to the next things. Because again, if you get stuck into just what's in the books and so on, like not obviously, as Jim will say, you need a text and so on. So I'm not saying that, but I say the synthesis that we have here by talking and thinking about the future things is also super interesting. So this came to mind when Soda was talking about the spiritual races.
Okay, so that was really interesting. Thank you so much, Matt. So I agree with you. I'm just not caught up in race either way. Like I don't think I'm special. I don't think anyone is particularly special. I don't worship anyone. I don't really, for me it's just, it is what it is. Like I'll just judge people and be like a little racist in my everyday life, but I don't really, it doesn't I don't think about it really. It's not like, oh my god, it's like categories and all that. Like I think, like let's just look beyond it, like Matt was saying. Like I was even trying to say, maybe stumblingly before, about facing east. Like where is east? So China considers itself the Middle Kingdom, so it faces east. That's California for China. So it's interesting, right? I don't know. I think that it's about forward facing, sort of look, yeah, we're bringing old ideas, primordial ideas, maybe, just maybe a little seeds of them at least hopefully. We bring these Dharmic ideas at least forward from old texts, from older ideas, also synthesized with a magical ideas, but maybe they're interrelated. Maybe there's, points of, they're talking about similar to the same thing. So we're also bringing that forward. And we're also like looking forward to what is happening on the quote unquote timeline, but we're also transcending it by discussing like what do we make of it next, just like Matt was saying. So it's really interesting and great points, Matt. Thank you. Yes, Solar, please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. No, I'm sort of interested in this question of sovereignty as it relates to the Atom Kadmon and specifically Superman, right? So like again, I don't watch or read or anything Superman, so it's kind of speculative. But again, based on my very limited understanding, Superman is sort of like inherently bought into the what I would say current, i.e., like post 1933 sort of like vision and understanding of America and sort of like that version of sort of liberal humanism. And what I mean is, so he's this superior being, right? He is, as we were kind of talking about earlier, he's sort of overcome all of his tragic contingency, right? He's not just stronger, faster, smarter than everybody. He's like this clearly sort of supreme or at least supernal creature, right? This power. But at the end of the day, he vanquishes the evil. I'm assuming, but he never disrupts the status quo, right? He never says, well, things are being run, pretty inefficiently, pretty badly. I could clearly do a better job, right? I am clearly of a differentiated, superior class of being than you, like, double-digit IQ, like, mere human, right? He never actually like takes the reins and the responsibility and the duties on himself to improve or remake or reimagine society in any meaningful way, right? And that's actually something that's very un-American, right? That's a very sort of new American, Ellis Island American, sort of post 1933 version of American. But America was originally based on the idea of fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. I'm going to go be a sovereign of my own micro kingdom over here, and I'll probably die. I'll probably get dysentery or get scalped by redskins, right? But if I don't die, I'm going to be king over here. Fuck you, right? Like that is the like sort of chiefly American sort of impulse. And I think that's important, not just because it's like a meme of like, oh, I'm a psycho libertarian, I won't do what you tell me kind of thing, but also that it takes seriously the idea that if you are capable, you actually have a duty to rule, right? And you have a responsibility to impose your will upon a world, first upon yourself, right? First and foremost, you are sovereign of yourself, but that you have a certain degree of responsibility commensurate with your potential to sort of see that replicated, resonate outward in the world, right? And that's something that I see being essential in the kind of restoration of a true sort of ascended American, or a model for a sort of initiatic ascended American Adam Kadmon, right? Is no longer turning away in fear or faux humility from the right and duty of sovereignty, I guess.
100% agree. I think that's the key metapolitical sort of idea. What Solar just laid out is this idea of like sovereignty over your own kingdom, because that is also you. Like that is the Adam Kadmon. It's like we denigrate this world. Oh, it's the Matrix. It's the Black Cube Matrix. It is the we live in the hell realms. Okay, Naga, that's fine. The gods have their karmas to bear, and so do you. That's how we would think of it. It's a very balanced approach, if you think, right? Humanity's best poised to move up the tree. So we should move up the tree in the best place, which is in the middle pillar in synthesis. So, I don't know. That makes more sense to me. It seems a lot easier, too. It's like going with the current instead of against it. Yes, I know. I think Matt, but it could have been Monty. Either one of you, please go ahead at your discretion.
Okay.
Please, Monty, go on.
Okay, I'll be very quick. Excuse me. So, the only point of contention that I have with Solar's, his description of Superman, which like I don't necessarily disagree with, is that Superman's responsibility comes from a place of compassion. It's a love for the American people, like the heartland, the soil. It's his parents who raised him when he landed in Kansas, Smallville, Kansas. Is what like formed him into like the man that he is, and so that like Norman Rockwell idealism is like his idealism, and but yeah, it's like the weak are responsible for the small. I mean, like Steve Saylor even says that that's like a tentpole of his like ideology, that the only reason why he cares so much about crime statistics is because we feel we have a responsibility to the lesser class, not to make this racial or anything, but like Superman is he is responsible for the earth because he is indebted to them, and it comes from a place of like pure unadulterated love. But yeah, I love Superman. Sorry.
That was really great, Monty. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I agree. And you can, like, there's almost no better analogy than a family farm than Malkuth. That makes complete sense. It makes sense in the tantric example. It's like she is the bride of a very wealthy landowner. Like, it just, that's, she, it's not a king. It's not, that's what it is. It's a landowner or a farmer, but like a aristocratic farmer. I know I'm using like a kind of like, I'm ironically using like a right wing term, but yeah, I mean, that's what it is like someone who is. So I think that both Monty's idea and Solar's idea can be actually synthesized. I think that both of those things can coexist. Now, am I the person to synthesize them? No, but I do think it. You have to ask questions. It's like, what is important? So do you have to? You want to reflect that idealism back onto yourselves. So I think that that's like a big question of like Hesed. It is kind of the wave rolling back inward, right? Like it's the crest that points back to the shore. That's sort of the interesting point for me. Is like you're pulling that loving kindness, that mercy back in. That is the Gevuratic element. It's kind of like that pulling force. So you're taking the idealism of what Monty's talking about, and you're sort of projecting it outward, but then what Solar is saying, this distrust, this mistrust, this very rightful rebellious, but maybe also like maybe you could say true libertarian spirit, that's also there. So you have to like figure out like what is the best way. I would ask you, Solar, what do you think is the best way to you want people to like work in order to achieve their kingdom, because that's part of like earning a kingdom or whatever, building one. But you also have to say, like, you want people to be able to achieve that. You want that to be realistic, livable, and experiential. Like all of those things. They can see it, they can look at their own family and say, yeah, this is actually possible. And you also want them to sort of like aspirationally say, I want better at the same time. So, like, also what Monty's saying. Yes, so please go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, like, I think, or to sort of come at this from a slightly different angle, um, like America was founded on the idea, also like in conception, we've resolved the sort of master slave dialectic, um, in favor of a sort of an aristocracy of free armed yeoman farmers originally, right? Like that is how the sort of the founding stock of our country sort of envisioned themselves, right? They're not masters. I mean, I know that a lot of them in some cases had like small to medium sized slaveholdings and things like that, but they were not members of a martial aristocracy that ruled over a society structured in that way, right? They were essentially free men who had sort of micro domains, right? Um, Also, Ernst Jünger talks about this a lot, like sort of taking this forward by 200 years, right, from the founding of America into the 20th century, that this sort of like quintessential sort of Western modern European man is the sort of free yeoman, right, as a sort of resolution of the master slave dialectic. But the point is that we had that, right? And at the end of the day, I think the goal or one of the chief aims of society is orienting as many people as possible in the direction of transcendence, right? To be able to provide anchors of meaning and sort of symbolic language that can give people sort of like purpose beyond themselves, right? Life beyond life, so to speak, right? And if you can't provide that for people, and your only default is, well, we have material abundance and it's make the best of it, kiddo. Um, to me, that seems like a failing. So insofar as we might be returning to sort of we're going to be hybridizing, we're still going to be we're going to be living in this era of micro sovereignty, but perhaps living within certain sort of experiments that represent a return to more traditional forms or structures of order, right? So perhaps a more capital T traditional like model in some cases might be more successful at orienting more people towards some kind of a possibility, if not like full initiation, at least the ability to live historically and to live beyond their contingent material bare existence, which I think would be a success. And in my mind, when I think of compassion, when I think of sort of like mercy and loving kindness, it's my ability to do that, to provide that for other people, that like that's what it means to act as a sovereign in the mode of loving kindness, right? Not just to necessarily let people rot, in their own filth.
I agree with that sentiment 100%. Couldn't have said it better. I think that it is like acting outside of yourself, like beyond yourself, but not necessarily beyond your kingdom. It's forethought without prejudice, you could say. But discriminating awareness, maybe, is a good way, maybe a more dharmic way to put it. I 100% agree. I think that that's what is probably the truth. And I said this before, is like, it does seem to be like an era, an aeon, if you will, of decoherence. It does seem to be a place where truth is less self-evident than ever, and perhaps even more in question. Hello, brother Rom, waiting for you, but thank you for so much for coming. There's our frater Singapura. Thank you so much, Rom, for coming. Appreciate it, from our lodge. What was your series, Rom? Aether Wave, Aether Punk, excuse me, Aether Punk. That is returning, so return to Aether Punk. Oh, Dr. Joseph Reed, he's wants to come up, so we're going to bring him up right now from the lodge. Thank you so much. Joseph, please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Jin. I wanted to follow up on the Superman thing, something that Monty and the Solar are discussing here. Superman is like the most powerful being on the planet, and he realizes that, and therefore he chooses compassion. He chooses to be kind, and he acts as example. He can only be an example for everyone else on the earth, and I believe it's his like wish that like they, the people of earth will see how he is, and they will want to change by that way. And like the thing about sovereignty is, and about kingdom is like, yes, we should 100% be sovereign beings, but we can't make other people want it. They have to want it for themselves. They have to choose, and we can only act in our own, I guess, circle, our own sphere, and be the sovereign of our own lives. But what gives me like strange rumblings in my stomach when I hear things about like kingdoms and things like that, like I don't want to live in a world where somebody's going to tell me what to do. Like that's not at all what I'm interested in. And like I don't want to tell somebody else what to do either. But I want to be the best that I can be. And like if people, like I'm so happy about this group because I learned things here and I'm like, oh wow, like people are living like that. That's really super interesting. I could live like that. Why don't I try living like that? And so I just kind of want to bring that into the discussion. And thank you everyone for your time. You're all amazing. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Really appreciate that. I think this is a really important question, is the Lulbert question. I think it comes up so often, and it's like how to address it. And I think there's multiple different angles, you could say. I think Solar does a really good job at this, but I'm going to let Matt go. So, Matt, please go ahead. I apologize, brother.
All good. So very interesting what Joseph bring up. So while Solar was talking about this idea of the model of Superman, like the American model of Superman, I saw something this week as well, kind of like showing how they synthesized both Iron Man and Captain America in the movies. So not the comics ones, but in the movies, the last like arcs that Marvel made. And it's interesting. It's an interesting shift because you go from Iron Man being this like basically almost even extreme American kind of, I don't give a fuck, I do whatever the fuck I want, I'm a billionaire, fuck everyone, I control myself and I control my own kingdom and fuck you. He goes from like this archetype, and Captain America going from the archetype of, he was born in an era where it was righteous to fight for the country and like follow all the rules and be super correct and so on from his point of view. He went from this point of view to then crossing with Iron Man. So they crossed. So like when Civil War came, then they like Iron Man was the one. No, let's actually stay with the government and do all this stuff and so on. And now Captain America was the one trying to be a rebel. So they were again learning with each other, like kind of shadowing each other, and coming into synthesis. So for them, it took two guys, two characters, very like Jin would say, aesthetic and Giveratic as well, like not only by the colors but the way they do things. And I think it's very interesting to see in other like comics, but also with all this idea about being sovereign and controlling yourself, or like having, if you have the capability, then controlling, or I'm saying controlling, but like helping, whatever, right? Using your capacity to help others in a way. It's a very interesting dilemma, because if you go by what's like the normie kind of vision, and I say normie, even sometimes people that think that they know about magic or whatever, I still would say they're kind of normie about this. But the normie vision about what a demon can do and what an angel can do in terms of like magical operations, a demon could be the one which is not gonna worry so much about, let's say, you like it can basically do more things. It's closer to us in understanding than, let's say, an angel. An angel, for example, would never, quote unquote, help you if you don't ask for it, and even when you do, it would kind of be kind of literal about it, like working in angles and so on. So the thing is, then the angel in theory is more powerful, right? So in theory, he could come, and like a being from fourth dimension. Now I'm not calling it angel, but imagine a being from a fourth dimension that is kind of close to you in a way. He could come and solve everything that you're going through, but they don't do this. In a way, first of all, and I mean they don't do this if you're not asking for it, right? If you ask, probably they'll do it. But if you're not asking, then they'll not do it. And then we can ask ourselves, like, why? Why wouldn't being that has the capacity to just solve all the problems come and do it? Is it because maybe, yeah, we got to do it for ourselves? And then if you bring this down to reality, when I have someone that I know is going through a problem, even if I know all the answers, sure, I can be there for help if they want my help, but should I force my help into them? For example, should I even like simply give advice to them, or try to do things? Because there are examples, or sorry, not examples, experiences that I've been through, or that I saw, that actually people that you see again are going through something, and then you think, oh, I'm gonna be good, and I'm gonna help them and so on. But because they're not prepared and they don't even want the help, you're actually, for them, in their point of view, making them like a disservice. So then they don't accept your help and like get even pissed that you're trying to help them. So it's a very interesting dilemma to understand. And then also what Joseph said, if then you don't want to be controlled, and you also don't want to control others, but then if we think then Kabbalistically, right, we're talking about the Adam Kadmon. So if we think, okay, wait a second, we all come in a way from kind of like a bigger group, let's say a bigger being in a bigger group. So in a way, we kind of have to work at least accordingly, otherwise the whole thing collapses. So again, it's always this balance between how much order and how much chaos of the things. How much should I be focusing on myself, and how much should it be in accordance to the exterior, to others, to the simulator, and so on. So always then resolving this in the synthesis, which again, middle pillar, it's how you do it. It's just sure, you can try other ways, but why bother? If you already have the middle pillar, just go for it. But yeah, very very interesting topics here.
Yeah, I agree. I thought what you said was, Matt, was really interesting. I didn't really realize how political this space was going to be, but it's really interesting. And Solar has brought up some really good questions and points of interest for me, because it is interesting to think of it through like this technically Hyperborean lens, and sort of like the diffusion outward and popularity of and the rise and fall of certain you could say pop cultures in the plural, like Korean pop culture. That's even seen like a rise and a fall, and sporadic elements will break into pop culture, and very interesting ones at very interesting sort of points in the timeline, the narrative of the timeline, so to speak. Okay, Solar, please go ahead.
Yeah, and this will probably be my last contribution. I'm gonna have to log. And again, thank you for everyone for bearing with me. I worked like 16 hours yesterday or something, so I'm like barely alive at this point. So I'm happy I got to kind of be on it all. Sorry for mumbling and taking up maybe a little too much space, but I just wanted to say, it's sort of in direct response to Joseph, because I don't think I articulated something, or maybe I left off something that other people wouldn't have read into what I said. So I'm not just a Dharmic guy, right? But I'm like very openly, I mean, I'm Aquino posting on the timeline, right? Like nonstop, right? I at least have some involvement with some left hand path stuff. I'm very idiosyncratic. I'm very syncretic. I'm a weird, like, autist dude, right? So this is all to say that liberation is, and again, capital L liberation understood both sort of in the traditional initiatic context. I see that as being the exact same as liberation in the Dharmic context, right? Not everyone would agree with that. So when I say like I'm oriented, I'm trying to aim upward and outward. That is ultimately the goal. So it's trying to envision the optimal set of social relations that will produce the greatest amount of freedom in that kind of particular sort of in a spiritual sense, but it sort of affects a lot of different areas. It's not exclusively spiritual, in as many people as possible. And so when I say like making decisions for other people, or keeping people within the guide rails, so like I went from teaching at a university to driving a truck right in the middle of the Midwest. And so I have the honor and privilege to work with a lot of the type of guys who you would expect me to work with, right? Doing essentially like commercial agriculture and transportation in the Midwest. A lot of these guys can barely, walk in this fucking straight line and chew gum, right? These are very simple people who are done a great disservice by the complete controlled demolition of systems of meaning that has taken place in our culture, right? These are not guys who are going to find their way into the Temple of Set, okay? And I know that I'm not trying to make them into that. And it's not that I'm trying to baby them. I mean, I am trying to protect them, and that it's part of my job to literally keep them alive and prevent them from killing each other with forklifts and such. So there is that. But by and large, I would want to see these guys plugged into exoteric outer temple type of spiritual and religious practices to at least alleviate the burden of, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Oh my God, I can't pay for, I can't pay the mortgage on my fucking trailer or whatever. Um, to basically give them something to orient towards and to look forward towards that is beyond and outside of themselves. That degree of freedom, that little bit of breathing room to reflect on their own existence, etc., is probably the best that you're going to get for someone born into the circumstances that a lot of them are in, and their limitations and stuff like that. I'm not trying to be patronizing. I'm just sort of being honest, right? And so, and I just want to signpost this. The book Archaeofuturism by Guillaume Fay provides a fairly novel and at least entertaining, if not slightly outlandish, solution to these and other related problems. I think it's available on Arctos in the second printing at this point. People might want to check that out. Anyway, so that's just what I have in mind. I'm not trying to put anyone back in chains and return to giga-based like kingdom larping type stuff. It's more that there might be systems that take a different form than contemporary sort of humanist, social democracy, etc., in securing meaningful lives for more people. And that's kind of what I have in mind as a sort of left-handed path dharma bro, whatever the fuck I am. And anyway, sorry, I'm done taking up space. Have a wonderful evening, guys. Great to see y'all.
Thanks, Solar, so much. That was so great. I think this is the truth, is that I needed a personal rightward shift personally. Like I needed the wheel to turn rightward for me so I could like have greater understanding of the world. I'm being serious. I'm joking, but I'm being serious. As we've talked about, millennials are left coded. There's something like just naturally we're into weird subcultures. We liked weird music, or at least that was considered weird music of our time. We were niche in all of our sort of outlooks. We were in the multiplicity, you could say. We were the most pagan of the generations. And then, that didn't necessarily bear the best fruit either in some ways. So maybe you could say that we needed the correction. So we took it, okay? We took our licks, you could say, so to speak. And where do we go now? And I think that that's what solar is also talking about. It's like, where do we go now? Okay. So we synthesize something interesting, maybe, perhaps, maybe in our minds, maybe in our hearts. And what is the best solution for, like, what is the best quote unquote cult? Because I think that's what a lot of this is about. Is like, who has the best packaging? Who has the best aesthetics? Who has the best story? Who is the best, um, who is the best salesman for their preferred ideology, cosmology, and occasionally ontology? Like, is it Kabbalah? Yeah, I think Kabbalah is a great tool. Is it Tantra? Yeah, I think Buddhism is a really good tool, and I think there's a reason why people all around the world have been attracted to Buddhist ideas, at least, if not in its fullness, at least in its portion, for a very long time. And I think it's because it's not like, particularly, like, people get caught up in like, oh, I want to do return to ancestors and like Thor LARPing, and like Solar is totally right. Like that, I understand that there is like a more Neoplatonic, subtle layer to paganism, but like, why even worship husks at all? I know that this is something that John especially will laugh about me saying, but it's also true. It's like, why do you get so hung up on like my ancestors, like Indo-European, who is the most ancient of ancients? Like, it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit and true at the same time. So just like, let it go, be flexible. Don't be like, this is very Temple of Set. I'm sounding like almost like Solar, like this be flexible stuff. It hit me the other day. I was like, oh, that's what Solar was saying about be flexible. This like Temple of Set shit. And like, that's not really how I mean it, but it's fine that it can be understood like that, because I think it's like, there's a relative truth, something true about it. So okay, so I'm acknowledging that, but I'm also saying, like, you know, like, I've always been like a pro Christianity Dharma bro. That's been my perspective, because I like those solar practices. I like that Tipheratic practices. And I think that's what Solar was getting at. And I think this is also something Monty touched on. Is like, what is your best presentation? Like, is that aspirational? Is the Christian sort of tradition aspirational? If you want to say yes, then you have to ask yourself, which is it? Because that's a question on the timeline. It's like, which Christian tradition is it? Is it Protestantism? Is it Mormonism? Is it Orthodoxy? Is it Catholicism? Is it none? Is it just like this Christ consciousness thing? Is that what the best presentation is? Like, I don't know, but maybe there is something in that, like, whatever. That's not maybe my decision to make of what I think is the best. Kabbalistically, I can comment on it and have done many times, of like, I think the Orthodoxy gets it the most right of all of them. I don't think they're 100% right. I don't think the world is just the carnal ground. I really don't. I think it's a garden. I think it's what you make of it. I think the builders were right in that way, but I think the ascetics were right in the other way. It's like, you have to balance sort of like these gross and subtle bodies. You don't even have to consider it spiritual. And like, I know Solar had to drop, but like, he's been reading a lot of Taoist literature, because the Taoists were very into this idea of like disaggregating things into their primordial nature. That is, if you understand how Buddhism works, Buddhism is very much about understanding the systems that came before, and whether they are true or not true, meaning how close or how far away in degrees of it is to Dharma, the primordial truth. So when the translators went to China from India, they said that Taoism was a proto Dharma. So it can be an idea of Dharma. That's what it's saying. And interestingly, when the Tang Dynasty travel writers, this is like the 7th century, when they went into Mongolia and Manchuria, they met with the shamans and they said, "What are these guys practicing?" And they called them shaman. So it even sounds like the word shaman because it's supposed to, meaning that they were indigenous practitioners of Taoism. Not indigenous to China, indigenous to their region. So they practiced Taoism, that's what the Chinese thought, but they just did it in their own cultural way. So it's much more primordialist, it's less perennialist. You're just like saying, oh, okay, that's fine, they're doing this. I don't even need to understand it particularly because they're just doing their thing. I'm just going to let them do their thing. And I think this is the idea of like cultural sovereignty as well. What is that? And what is the American culture worth preserving? Like, is it, and it's this idea of liberty, it's this idea of personal sovereignty, and it's the idea of degrees of freedom to choose what you want to believe and what you want to aspire to, but also like creating the circumstance that is the best, not only for you, but like for other people to sort of achieve this greater sort of great work, the true great work. You could say like raising society. If you want to use really theosophical language and get me into really big trouble, I'll say like a kind of Esalen Institute, like apotheosis. But like I said, I think that that is written in the Constitution. I think there's a very Luciferian element, right? That's a lot of like Freemasonry, and I think that's what Solar was even talking about. Like, what are the associations that are going to attract people, and like those secular religions? There's nothing wrong with them. I think we were told all to be like, oh, they're bad, they're evil. Like, isn't that an interesting narrative? Like, what are klipas but things you believe to be evil? That doesn't make them evil or good at face value if you don't know. If the outer density is the only thing you know, then how can you judge good or evil? It'd be very hard to discern. I'm just saying. So we kind of destroyed those in a way, but also they still exist to a degree, and there's many people affiliated with them, and that's no problem. But like, what is that going to attract? Like the sensitive young man? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be like Grandpa Club, but you never know. Maybe if we're like using Solar's model of a more traditional society, we could say like there's a degree of truth to that where it is, they were going to return to more of the social club, sort of like intellectual dark web, but in like our parlor system way. But then I also think maybe, what we're doing now is kind of like the modernization, is the update version, is the Johnny Mnemonic, the cyberpunk version, using the open web. Because what even is the dark web? Like, what even is that? Like, like we are just operating on an app. It seems like just speaking into the void, especially when I first started and I didn't have co-hosts. It literally just felt like Jin, stream of consciousness. I was just gonna get out these ideas that I've been percolating on, so I'm just gonna like fucking go for it. Nobody gives me a shot, so I'm just gonna take it. And so that's what that is the genesis. It's like it's the storytelling. That's what I've learned is that everybody wants to package their story to be the Harry Potter or to be the Superman or to be the what's the one? Oh, Iron Man. Matt brought this up. Iron Man. So that's a really good point. Or was that Joseph? That might have been Joseph. I apologize. One of you brought up Iron Man. Matt brought up Iron Man. I personally hated Iron Man for a long time because I was like, oh yeah, the capitalism, like yeah, whatever. But you know what? The reality is like he is an annoying character, and also played by a very annoying actor. I find just personal. I know people like him, but it's just for me, I don't like him. So I don't know. I just never liked him, but I did actually really appreciate the way Matt brought those things into synthesis because I think that is true to a degree. But what heroes do we let represent our archetypes? Like if we're saying we move in an aeonic cycle, I think we can all speculatively, you don't have to believe it, and that's okay if you don't, but I believe it. So if we are speculatively moving in an aeonic cycle, like what heroes shall embody those true aeonic archetypes, those three sort of characters that can turn the wheel? I don't think it's a Tony Stark and Iron Man and even a greater Marvel presentation. And there's a degree where Solar is totally correct, and the Temple of Set stuff is, in a way, correct. Is like you have to be a master of your own kingdom. Like will is like very, it's a high priority, and to know what that is high priority. That doesn't mean it's all of it. Obviously, I said in Anna of the Daughter, love over will, and I do believe that. And I think that also means like Dharma. I think that means like luminousness, masslessness, and emptiness, and Diamond Thunder. So all of those things over will. But I think that to even get to that point, you have to know what your will is, number one. So I agree. Will is really important. So please, Brother Matt, go ahead.
So as you were bringing this idea that the storytelling, right? So what it just hit me again that when you buy something, like when people buy something, they're actually never buying the product itself. Like when I buy a phone, I'm not buying the phone. When I buy food, I'm not buying the food. I'm buying the story, which can be told through the usage of like symbols, of actual like text or whatever. I'm buying the story that that thing is telling me. Because even if you say, nah, bro, yeah, I go and I buy that burger because I'm hungry, you know, okay, but why did you buy that burger and not the other burger? You know, like especially when you have like delivery apps that literally you can choose anything, right? You can open up and you have 1,000 options, but you buy one of them. You can only choose one. So you choose the one with the story, be it again through the signs, through the text, whatever, that resonated the most with you. And guess what? You are the one. So imagine now you are in a movie theater. The movie's coming from the projector, but you don't see it, right? You just see the movie. You're just looking into the movie. And say you picked like a movie that's maybe not the best, or at least that you are already bored of it. And you keep seeing the movie. Let's say the movie is, you know, that you have to pay bills. Like that's the movie that you're watching. I like to also use the example of like an app. You open the app or the game of paying bills. Guess what? Every new scene, you're going to need a bigger climax about paying bills. So it's never going to end. It's going to be forever. You're always going to be, you know, paying bills. So if you have an app open that is about, you know, not being worthy of something or whatever, like Jin was saying, what are the heroes that you want to bring with you? Like if you have an app open that is about not being worthy, then guess what? You're going to put yourself into positions that further prove to yourself that that is the reality, because that's the movie that you're playing in the fucking projector. Like if you're not liking it, look back into the projector and remember, oh, wait a second. I can go and change the fucking movie. I can close the app, open a new one. You know, I can, you know, play another game and so on. So it strikes me again, like how, and that's why Kabbalah, Tantra, whatever the system that you want to use would then be extremely important, because they are the ones that are giving you the tools to choose the new movie, app, game, whatever. They're letting you understand the symbols. For example, when you see a big company like I don't know, Nike or whatever, you know, get for example, do this exercise. Get a big company that you like and see how they portray their story. So like, what are the slogans they use? How are their ads? What do they do in their ads usually? What are the symbols that they use and so on, right? And then you start to understand, wait a second, these guys are not doing this stuff randomly. You know, for someone that says, oh, I don't believe in astrology, and like, if you're still stuck on this bullshit, just go and see it. They use it blatantly. It's not only about the dates that people post about stuff, but it's the signs, it's the symbols. You know, if you understand them, they don't understand how if you're not paying attention, you're being controlled all the time. Like people are like moving you left and right. So I completely agree with Jin. Like be what like remember and try to think about what are the heroes, right? Let's say it, the heroes that you want to bring forward into the new aeon, into the new age, whatever you want to call it, because they're the ones that are going to shape the stories that you're going to live, and you can, change them blatantly fast. It shouldn't be hard. It's just a matter of first wanting. So if you don't want, then it's never going to happen. So you first need to want and let go, let things come your way. You're going to figure it out. But again, a little spicy of Kabbalah, if I may, but that's optional if you want.
Thank you, Matt. That was so great. I love when you come on and are able to synthesize like that. That was really beautiful. Thank you so much. Dr. Joseph, please speak your mind. I know you were waiting forever for me to notice, and I apologize.
No, it's totally great. There's like, I can't keep up all the notes because there are 10,000 things in a stream, and there are 10,000 pins I want to put in things. But I thank you, Matt, and thank you, Jin, and really, thank you, everyone, sincerely. It's a really wonderful group. So, what Jin is, what Matt said about the, what looking back at the projector, this is exactly what McLuhan is talking about, because we get so lost into the content, we forget that what is this actual thing doing to us? So, how that works. We can put many pins in this because I also want to watch the sunset. But in terms of heroes, I like, what kind of heroes do we want to bring forth? And we're looking outside to heroes, like, oh, Iron Man and all this, like all this, but like, what heroes can we bring forth? This idea of we can come to in the Aeon of the Daughter of things being layered simultaneously, and we're becoming aware. It's like reading Finnegan's Wake, which I totally recommend if you ever want to. Like, each sentence can have 7 different meanings, and they're all layered on top of them, and you all see them like simultaneously. This is what I'm talking about as syneresis. In terms of the political, from a while ago when Jin first started talking, he had a turn rightward, and I would say that it's probably a long curve rightward in my direction. But what I'm noticing is, like, you hear about the horseshoe, they horseshoed from left wing to right wing. And I'm like, oh, but actually it's like a circle. It's just a circle. We're just going around and around, and oh, we're coming around this curve right now. But then again, I think left wing, right wing, you need both wings to fly. And then look at those pictures of angels with all the eyes on them and all the wings. Tell me which wing is the right wing on one of those beings. So I think there's like we're moving into a time where we can't really possibly can conceive of what we are becoming. And I think that's really super interesting. I'm going to watch a sunset now. I appreciate everyone's time, and I'll hop back on probably later, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Really appreciated that. It was obviously really great. Enjoy the sunset, please. Touch grass, as the Keks say. But also this very keynote, right? Like, that's why I like to post them, is about the sunset, because it certain pictures of the sunset can capture a light in a very Kabbalistic way. That's not true of every picture. As someone who has now looked through thousands of sunset pictures, it is not always true, or specifically that it doesn't capture it in the way that I would like to present it to my however many few Twitter followers or mutuals or whatever it is. I just like what I want it to portray. It's not all of them, but some of them can, and that's a particularly interesting moment. It's an interesting tantric moment. It's an interesting astrological moment, but also it is like what Matt said. It's like letting it all go. It's like not grasping at like meaning, at like oh, it must be perfect. It perfectly contain like every truth as much as I want it to, as much as I will it to. Maybe it just is like an interesting thing, and then you let people take of it and be like, okay, This is interesting. Maybe you just say, you do the best you can with the set of circumstances. This is very Chaos Magic 101. You do the best with the set of circumstances that you have. This is why I find John's approach so fascinating, because it's so anti-chaos magic. It is like so regimented. It's like looking for the perfect election. Chaos magic would just look and be like, okay, maybe there's like a good moment on this day that I feel like doing something. Maybe it's not even pre-planned. Maybe you just sort of like, I want to do something in the next 2 hours I have free. So like let's figure out like what I can do with the set of circumstances that I have. That's also how I try and deal with just everything. It's because it is at times overwhelming, and like I don't even know where I personally fall on the Epstein stuff. I'm not saying that to be like Mr. Edgelord or Mr. like Zio Cuck or whatever. Like I don't even like, to me that's retardational. I'm just being honest. I honestly don't know. It seems very decoherent, and I just cannot give like a positivistic answer of like where I fall either way. So I think that it was right to be brought up, simply because it has been such like a major focal point of like the last almost a decade. Not quite, but a considerable amount of time. And I think it also parallels that like leftward to rightward shift we were talking about, because one of the, I'm not going to name the podcast, but the podcast at its time was huge. Like 100,000 a month on Patreon, huge. And it just was able to like sort of like sell us this. I'm not saying it was wrong. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it was able to sort of model for people more on that, who would have considered themselves as retardational as that is, because that is that kind of political encapsulation strictly into one of those things, I think is a mistake. I think that's not Silver Surfer. That is like, that's Saturnian. You're up to a fixed. A Quicksilver Surfer is going to be able to be flexible. That doesn't mean that you take ideas. It doesn't mean that we suddenly all adopt socialism. I think everyone doesn't want. I think nobody wants that. I think like a few nutcases want that, and then I think most normies, and myself included, it's like you want something totally different. You want nothing to do with that, and I think that's true of all sort of political inclinations, is that they cannot really be contained in what we have. Like the flux that is in the air, in the ether, in the aether wave, cannot really be contained in like, especially like 18th century political labels. Like it doesn't make any sense. Yes, Matt, please go ahead. I'm sorry you've waited forever.
No worries. As you were saying about the not being fixed into something, I wanted to share an experience to highlight how that works. So I've been studying Japanese for a while, just first as a hobby, because I kind of did it in the past already, so it's kind of like easier to pick up when you try it again. And because I want to eventually like travel there and not be retarded, I want to be able to speak to people, so I'm learning it. And it is funny because again, I put this as a goal, right? Again, I changed the movie, the app, the game, whatever. I added the movie of me going to Japan. So now, okay, first, why I'm going? My main goal is I want to go to concerts of bands that I like that mainly playing in Japan. So again, it's about going to concerts. And then because I already started playing that movie, what I realized is, wait a second, where I live in Italy, there is already some Japanese bands coming to play. So why the fuck should I wait to go and like travel if I can already go to the concerts? Doesn't make sense, right? I can just go already. And then I realized, wait a second, if I'm already going there in the concerts and there's going to be people that, well, can't speak Japanese because they're there, right? They sing in Japanese. And I might as well just try and speak to them and practice or whatever. At least, like, even if I cannot speak it properly yet, just try it out. So again, that's what I had in mind, but I wasn't fixated on it because, well, who says that if you go to a concert you're gonna speak to the performers, the musician. You don't necessarily, right? It depends of the size and if you have a proper place and so on. So what happened? I went to 2 concerts in the past week that had Japanese people. So in one of them, again, I went with the intent of doing it, of speaking Japanese, but then nothing that assured me before I went that I was gonna be able to do it. But what happened is I looked into the after I had already seen the event for months, I saw that, wait a second, there's a ticket that I can pay slightly more and then have some kind of meet and greet before and have a picture or whatever. So I went. It was with the composer of Naruto's OSTs, Naruto and Fairy Tales. First of all, that's freaking cool. I didn't know those type of guys did concerts, and it was, I think, the most emotional one that I went. But anyways, it was freaking awesome. And okay, I was there. I tried. I had now the opportunity to speak because we had the meeting greet, and I was able to try and say a thing or two. Just appreciate his work and whatever. And because it was the first time, it was kind of hard. Also, I had already everything in mind, but then emotionally, you have this kind of excitement, and then you can forget things and whatever. But it was cool, and I even ended up just Always Lucky. That's a nice movie that you can play, by the way, in your mind or app or whatever. Just play the app that you're always lucky. So I was lucky to get a fucking action figure or whatever they gifted there from the Fairy Tail main guy, but whatever. So that happened, and then the second one with another band, again, no expectation that I actually would have a moment that I would speak to people there in Japanese. I just went wanting to do it, but let it go. I arrived at the place. I usually arrive early to even see the other bands if there are some, and so on and so on. I went to the merch stand and I noticed that there were some papers, literally some printed papers, small ones behind the all the clothing and so on. And there was some stuff written in Japanese. And I was like, okay, what the fuck is that? I couldn't understand what was written yet. I just couldn't understand it was Japanese. But then I had the intuition, okay, let me ask the guy, oh, what the fuck is this? Then I asked him, okay, what are those papers? And he said, oh, you can buy it, and then you have the chance to take a picture with the group or just one of the performers, and then have a quick chit chat while they sign the thing. And I'm like, again, fucking perfect. Okay, let me get this. So I get it, and again, had the opportunity after the concert to go in and try and speak a little bit. And this time was best because I had already went before, right? And so there was less excitement of the thing, so I was just able to do it more smoothly. But again, just goes to show that, well, first of all, if you, again, with this idea of the movie, the app, the game, whatever you want to use, when you are tuned into the thing, you start to look for the things, and the things start to appear to you, not because they weren't there before necessarily. They were there, but you weren't interested in them, or you didn't feel like you were worthy or prepared or whatever, right? But the more that you try to link yourself to the thing, the more it appears, and you, by not being attached to the outcome or how it should be, the more magical the thing becomes, the easiest. The like water, you're just flowing around, the example Jin gave of surfing is perfect, because you're just surfing around, just playing, and you have the breeze in coming towards you and so on. So it's it's not forced, and yeah, I think that's a way to practically explain how these kind of things happen. It's not just talking about things. Just try it out and you'll see how this shit happens.
Thank you, Matt, so much for saying all that. I agree. I think that it's really difficult. I think, but that is what I'm choosing to take, that sort of lesson that I think is relative truth, of course, but perhaps inner outer secret, you could also say. So it has a degree of primordial truth, maybe. Is to be flexible and not to be super fixed, and to look at why we are fixed in certain opinions. It's okay to have them, but it's also, you have to understand and know what something is to really even acknowledge that you are aware that you have it, that it's an aggregate, that maybe you're okay with that. Maybe you're okay to be fixed in this area. Okay, that's okay. But like at least have sort of awareness of why that is and your reasoning for that. There's nothing wrong with it. Just be able to defend it logically. I think that that's a perfectly reasonable expectation. I think that's a much better, I do place a lot of emphasis, on Yesod, and I do think that that is a very, very, very primordial, perhaps in place for rectification. And of course, I'm not saying that it isn't, but it can be in a clipothic way a place of too much feels, too much, way too much longhouse. You can't live like that either. So we have to temper it. We need that Gevratic fire, but we also need the waters of Hesed. But as I've often said, there's also a very masculine quality. There's a very feminine quality, Green Tara. But Green Tara is like also a deeply tantric goddess. She is very, very magically powerful. Black magic also. Both. Because it is like kind of like it's like a both, it's like a positive and a negative charge. It's very plus ultra, right? So what I'm trying to say is you're in a, your skull cup is filled with the swirling vast array of information and also aggregation, and you have to kind of discern, you're trying to at least discern the primordial truth from that. Ram and I often talk about the Bhairavi consciousness. The Bhairavi consciousness is the kind of like sitting goddess who's horny, ultra sexual. She just lusts and lusts and lusts, desire, desire, desire. But the kind of ascended consciousness, like you could say the aeonic, aeon of the daughter consciousness, is the kind of like rectification of that. She is not the horror the archons spoke of her. And no, she is actually like her own person. She's kind of like a sovereign, you could say, of her own kingdom. The Crystal Millennium Kingdom often is a good way to describe that, because the truth is primordial, but it's also relative. It's also in view and out of view at different times. It's also very Yesodic, right? But you have to be able to discern what the like correct feelings are. You can't just lean 100% into your feelings. And so to go back to that kind of SoCal Americana, what I want to say before I like start the closeout in a few minutes, but before that, it's like what culture defines the American experience. And I think that it was Monty that said it, but there is kind of like a localization that is really interesting, a regionalization, and those sort of places unified together. That is kind of what unified America is. And then you could also say like unified Hyperborea. Like people on the right tend to look at places like Chinatown or like San Gabriel Valley or whatever, or like some diaspora community, and they think, oh, those are enclaves of worship of a foreign land or whatever, or they have allegiances to other people. But you could also consider them like ethnic enclaves in America. That's kind of like also an interesting thing you often hear discussed on right-wing Twitter. Like, don't you want to emulate what they have also? I don't know. I'm not saying to do it. I'm just saying I personally think it's all like kind of fake, and it's no word. No, I hate We Was Kangen. We Was Kangen is annoying, whether regardless of who it's from, and that's my opinion. I'm not saying anyone else has to have that opinion, but that's my opinion. I just think We Was Kangen is very Kali Yuga, and I don't think anyone's ancestors inherently make them superior or inferior. I think it's like the land of the New World is what you make of it. That seems very Hyperborean to me. That's kind of the ethos that I like. That's kind of the ethos, that I think is important to like the American identity, is like work and like build and grow and expand, and like very Hasidic qualities. But there's also like that discriminating awareness, that Gevratic quality, that kind of bring things into clarity, bring things into like correct view. And I agree with what Solar said to a degree. There is kind of like a traditionalist element that should be adhered to in a way. That doesn't mean that, like some of the discourse gets like very over. Yes, it's amusing to a certain autistic kind of discourse poster, and like even for me, I do find it humorous at times, but it is very comedic, but not necessarily in a good way. It kind of feels like I don't know, like yeah, look, men can be fucked up, women can be fucked up. The gender discourse stuff, I think, is really that is. I think we are past looking at things like that, and I think that also goes to like the political question, like repeal the 14th or whatever. Like, yeah, that was funny like 2 years ago. It's not really that funny anymore. Like, it's a little funny, it's funny to the right person in the right context, but it's not as hilarious. I think everybody can acknowledge that. It's not as hilarious as it used to be. I'm not saying you can't use it. There's a time and a place for everything. I don't believe in censorship of any words. I think that they're all fair game. I think like if you're going to play the game of identity, then you're opening yourself completely up to being attacked for that klipa. I'm into breaking klipas, not making them. I've said this a million times on here, but it is true. Like, I really do believe that. Like, I do not like specific identities. People attack me for mine all the time. That's okay. I'm secure. I'm a secure, young, sensitive Eurasian man. That's completely fine with me. She can attack me all day. That's okay. Hyperborea, baby. So I had a really fun space. I think it was great. I think everybody brought really interesting things. Shout out to Escape from Plan A, obviously, Monty Jung, and so many other people. It was an incredible podcast for like sort of like formulating what I didn't want to be. Like what I didn't want to emulate either a boba or them, and then I realized actually I don't have to emulate any of them. I can just think for myself, discern for myself, not be fixated on like, oh, what is the I mean I've never been fixated on that, but like the outward I would never necessarily have expressed it. I would have just thought of it. I would have just definitely been like, this is a joke, right? But to be honest, I'm just being honest, and maybe people will be like, that's cowardly, and that's fine. But outwardly, I definitely would have performed the group ritual. But I would have inwardly and secretly both thought it was a huge joke. So I think that's what broke free in the last like couple years is like that. Unironically, we can hate things. We can be like, yeah, we're not okay with it. But then also, like, there is like a negative kind of aggregation to that. And I think we see this a lot in, yes, certain questions, we'll say, in certain war discourse. I think we see it. It's just, can you control your kingdom? Can you control yourself? Does any of that even matter? Does it like, is it negating like your Hasidic infinite potential? No. To be too in favor or too against or too involved or too inflamed, that's not good discriminating awareness. That's not good Gevra, right? Just one of those Tiferatic consciousness where it's at. Like that's the normie, that is the adept, and that is the sort of way of the master, is to all three, sort of, you could say. It's very like Tripura Sundari, like very most beautiful thing in the three worlds. It is kind of like that Diamond Thunder synthesis, because of course Tiferet is a way to receive the pink ray, if you want to call it that. You could also say it's just like the light of Kether shines upon Tiferet, but your consciousness is supposed to stay there. You're supposed to, that's just your heart, right? That's the whole point, Christ of the Sacred Heart, if Joshua was here. But his skull cup is really at Dav. It's really at true non-dual gnosis. So I think that's a great way to like approach all kinds of mysticism. Like, yes, I'll talk about Tantra, I'll talk about Jewish mysticism in the form of Kabbalah. We'll talk about like Temple of Set stuff. We will talk about paganism. Like, look, I don't hate anyone for like You want to go worship a tree, go for it. Like, I'm not against that. I've never said I was against that. I'm not against like yaksha spirit worship. It makes perfect sense in a Buddhist context. It's just that you don't want to get fixated on those. Those things aren't God with a capital G, whatever even that is. But those things aren't God. They're not infinite, and they're not even immortal. So like, don't get fixated like so hardcore on like what they can give you. The reality is they're also the most powerful gods. It's like very ironic almost. It takes a true hipster to understand the irony in this. Is that it's very non-dual as well. So that's something interesting to be said about like meta culture. But like a yaksha is like many of the yakshas were tamed by tantra. Ram and I have spoken about this in the chat. Many of the Buddhist tantras talk about taming nature spirits against the higher gods. That's sort of my thing. It's like you could say it's a very rebellious spirit that early tantra has against the world hierarchy. It's like, we're going to take on these samsaric demiurges. We're going to take on these constructs, and we're going to flay them, and we're going to inhabit the corpse with our luminosity. That's what they say, like verbatim. And so, yeah, I think I kind of bring that too. And I think that's also like a big part of what Hapaboria is. It is like a kind of Luciferic, kind of libertine, a little bit, but not libertine. I actually hate that word. We're going to have to think of a totally new sort of frame of reference for that. But I do like Quicksilver Surfer. So I do like the idea of like the man is his kingdom. His kingdom is like also his home, and it's his property, and it's like the things that you exert control over, which is of course yourself and your own life, and to take like as much Kabbalistic sort of like you ascertain how many of the sufferer you can activate sort of while you're there. So as Solar would say, it's like kind of like go higher, go more towards the Diamond Thunder consciousness, like how to make other people realize that. And I think that like one thing we talked about, obviously Brother Ram again brought this up, it was the Ipsos, the Aeon of Mott, the sort of like using the app for our means. Now that lady believed that Ipsos was the final word of the Aeon. I don't believe that's true, but I think that's one of them. So I think that's kind of a great place to start to close, is like this idea of what we're doing now is interesting because we are synthesizing in real time. We are dialoguing, sort of transcending the timeline, but we're also transcending time in a very real way, and space on a thing called Spaces, on an app called X, which is both the 10 and the 11. Sort of like some people would say that's a paradox, or like it's hermesticist. I do not, as many of you know, I do not like those kinds of like ideas of like the hermaphroditic like figure. I'm very against that. You could say I like things to be as they are, like the right label for the right vessel. You could say I just like Chinese autistic like that. I like things to be categorized in like a discernible way. So I do not agree with that, but I understand her in a tantric way, which is post-generative. So you can understand that however you want, but that's how I understand it. So I do not look at the Barbello and the Gnostic text, to be honest, and because I'm not, I'm pretty smart, to be honest. So the Gnostic texts actually agree with me to a large degree. Now, was there a sect in ancient times, you could say, that were Barbawites, that preference, that spider matrix grandmother, that Rom and sometimes Joshua is so fond of referencing? Sure. You could absolutely say that people her, but I preference the daughters. So we're going to move forward with that ascetic quality that Joseph kind of brought up, and like that kind of like letting things flow and dancing and non-dual, like recognizing, yeah, we are on the carnal ground. There's so much outside of ourselves that we cannot control, that we have literally no say on. It's not even really worth commenting on. It's like that's like almost a waste of the word. I'm not saying every time. There's definitely a good tweet to be had. Don't get me wrong. Don't ever, don't ever, uh, don't ever waste an opportunity for a good quote tweet. Like that's your. If this is like John likes a quote that I started a new religion, or he started teasing me. This was months ago. He would tease me about starting a new religion, and I was like, yeah, you know what? This would be a great idea. So let's start like a totally new religion. It's like amazing. It'll be like kind of normy, but it'll be kind of tantric at the same time. It'll be like the best kind of like Diamond Thunder synthesis, right? It'll be like very meta, very American in a way, very American Dharma. Anyways, whether I start one or not is totally beside the point. I'm not starting one at this point anyway. But it is interesting, right? It's like, what do we believe and how do we believe it? And there's, that's what I like about love, and love is the cause of knowledge, and Lamed and Path 22, and why I linked it to the sort of the Aeon, because I think that it's in the Geberatic fire, because it is heat. I've explained this many times, but it's heatless. So she's managing to tame that. So it's like taming our expectations, our relationships, our passions with other people. Like, just because you are initially attracted, I'm not using this as like an example for dating or me dating or anything like that. It's nothing to do with that. Okay, I'm just prefacing it. You can be attracted to someone. I'm not talking about that kind of attraction. I'm talking about magnetized. Okay, to someone initially. That does not mean like other kinds of attraction, but it can easily be confused sometimes in that way, right? That's normal. And what I'm saying is that you have to start to discern and recognize it. That's what the whole Geberatic process is. It's about discernment. It's about pulling back that taut um, string of the bow, because she's wielding a bow and arrow, which I spoke about today in my dragon tweet. The bow and the arrow is the symbol of the eclipse. So now you learned a bit of tantric iconography. You can go forward in your life, and anytime, you don't even have to remember these spaces, but you can, anytime you see that in Buddhist iconography, tantric iconography, or even I want to say Indian tantric, but it's not. That's not quite right. But just say the kind of tantra that I think is cool, Sri Vijaya and Buddhist. So if you see a bow and arrow, that does signify the eclipse, and it signifies a measure of control over Rahu, who also, obviously, in my system, which is similar but not perhaps exact to the Steiner system with Ahriman and Lucifer. Obviously, I just use the Jyotish way, because I think that's a perfectly a well-equipped way to discuss the dragon as he is, both a gross and a subtle body. So, anyways, I'm gonna close it here. I will obviously let my two co-hosts that I have left, which is Monty and Matt, plug themselves, of course, but I will do room shout out before then. So, thank you all so much for coming. Appreciate it. Amazing. These plus ultra. So it happens in synthesis. Synthesis happens in consent, and it happens as a speculative idea. And so that's kind of how you have to treat it, and like hopefully you all make your lives your great work, because that's really what these spaces are all about. It's about like how to enact, and especially with this space, like, who is the new American Adam Kadmon? Well, it's you, whether you're American or not, even, really, to be honest. It is. There are parts of that whole, like, I'm not going to get into it, but like that whole, I'm not co-signing BAP in any way, okay? Basil, if you're listening, I swear I'm not. It's nothing to do with that, okay? What I'm saying is there's a use, pragmatically, in kind of like self-improvement, physicality, and fitness, and like awareness of those things. Those things are all really great, and those are all aspirational things that we should, strive for. But there's also like that's kind of like irony pilled as well, and it is kind of like people are searching for spiritual things, especially even. So my thing is like Solar, and I think Matt also brought, and Monty, I think all three brought up this idea of like what to do about the people who seem to be stuck maybe on the spiritual ladder, you could say. I'm saying, so this is totally Jin, and you can totally disagree. It's like take it or leave it, do as thou will kind of thing. But I think just worry about yourself for right now. Take control of that. If you feel like you're in control, 100%, then worry about outwards. Then your Hesed can be expansive. But until you're at that place, that is a cliche for a reason. Those in glass houses shall not throw the first stone, shall not cast the first stone. And that sounds like it doesn't really apply, but it does actually apply. Your fortress better be Diamond Thunder, impregnable, invincible. Thou shalt not cast the first stone, because you're smarter than that, hopefully. Okay, so John, Space Answered, upcoming episode on Threshold Saints. Contact John for all your astrological needs on a fee scale, which I'm not sure of, but I'm sure is very reasonable. And John also got recently accepted to his 3rd year of astrology course. So we are very proud of John, and John has given me and the Lodge tons of free astrology advice, as well as provided charts for many people in the Lodge as a service. And so we very much appreciate him and thank him very much. Bull Brave Free, Avi, thank you. Obviously a perennial, primordial, both, maybe. Figure, who has always come, and obviously a yogini from the Lodge. Thank you so much. I hope you will take me up on that and become a host one day. Thank you so much for coming. I very much appreciate it. Sir Tim of the Tunnels, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you, from the great state of Hawaii. Very Happaborian. Definitely Honolulu, and perhaps Los Angeles, and even shout out Joe Nally, and also Robert Stark. Could say San Francisco could also be. Maybe there's a triangle there. Very interesting. There's a right triangle, maybe. I don't know. But there is a triangle there, maybe, and that you could say that is like the cornerstone of Hapaboria, at least part of it, right? Because the whole thing of America is federation of states, right? Or a confederation of states, or whatever you guys are. A unique synthesis. And that's really what the American experiment is. It's like a synthesis. And so it's like whether you like the U.S. or not, it sets the tone. Nobody can really take that. BRICS has kind of shown itself to be a weaker polarity, I would say. Not necessarily that it won't be an economic force and all of that, and there are like real world implications. I'm not dismissing any of that. But what I'm saying is that culturally, there's something potential that contains deep potential about America, because it is a vast wilderness in a lot of ways. And seeds can be planted here. And they should be. And this is and America is like just like I opened with, the quote from Big Trouble in Little China. Maybe I'll end with this. There's also a book by Carlos Bulosan. Carlos Bulosan was a Filipino-American writer. I know you're like, what does this have anything to do with this? Well, he wrote a book called America is in the Heart. So to bring up something Solar said right at the beginning, like the hierarchy of like, what is Asian American? Well, it's fake and gay. It doesn't exist. That doesn't really exist. That's a total fake construct. Like a total fake construct. Just like most identities are, to be honest. Total fake construct. So Okay, we broke it. We said, yeah, that doesn't really exist, actually. What really matters is like your degrees of Americanness, and like, but it's not like unified. It is kind of like perfectly aeonic, like aeonically equipped, you could say. It's like the ability to be flexible, the ability to be discerning, and the ability to be to shout out Joshua, to have praxis, to enact the rights that you do have so the experiment can continue. I think that's kind of the point. Excuse me, I didn't mean to clear my throat. But okay, so we will close now. So John, Avi, Sir Tim, Cassandra. Thank you so much, Cassandra. Really appreciate you. Great to see you. You've been such a stalwart trooper. I hope that these spaces are of, I don't know, of interest. I guess there must be of interest. So thank you so much for coming. Check out Cassandra, content creator, Etsy store, all rounder. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thaddeus Maximus, thank you. Longtime mutual, one of my longest mutuals. Appreciate it. So glad to see you here. Zachary Shumar, of course, Lodge Brother, as well as co-host on Threshold Saints. Thank you so much. Check out Zach's episodes on Tracy Twyman. Obviously, we did groundbreaking, pioneering, and Eat Your Heart Out, Crystals, literally the first series on Tracy Twyman. And we did the right way. We did the speculative way. So that is interesting because that is something that I've kind of become known for. So interesting. Ram, Frater Singapura. So thank you so much for coming. Obviously, I look forward to seeing both you, Ram, and Shakti at every space. And because you are our two Asian lodge members, it's really important to me, especially for this idea of Hapaboria, that at least you can be in even if it's a passive dialogue, which is never really passive because both of you have emojis, which are metaphysical. I think Matt would agree with that. But also you have the chat, so you actually can speak with us, and you're also welcome to come up as well. So the reality is like we have to kind of give space, make space. That's why all the leftoids love that. Because as Ram said, like how can you synthesize in space? Well, use the sound. So interesting, right? That's the space of synthesis, is the sound. It's very alchemical. It makes sense in Buddhism. Okay, Shakti, thank you. Japanese Zucchini, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you. Great to see you. Thank you so much for your healing presence in the lodge. Obviously, Bibliomancy, thank you so much for coming, Bibliomancer, excuse me. Appreciate you. Longtime mutual. I'll always like to see you on the timeline. Very cool. Thank you so much. Mookie, of course. Crotakini, thank you so much for your compassionate care for our feathered friends. Thank you. You know, I'm particularly fond of crows. But I actually like gray jays. I don't know if you're familiar with those. Gray jays are my actual favorite bird, if you're ever wondering. But I also like another bird, which is called snake-eating crested eagle. So I don't know. I also like that bird, which is endemic to Southeast Asia. It's a smaller eagle, but a very cool looking, sounding bird. Makes a kuru kuru sound. So very Sanskrit sounding. So thank you so much for coming. And Monty, Matt, Solar, Joshua, and Magic Mike. Magic Mike's our new co-host. I know he didn't come tonight. That's okay. You know, it's flexible. We're trying to be flexible. We're showing people, you know, like we're going to hold space for each other whether we are here or not here. It's kind of the whole point. So it's flexible, right? So thank you to them. Brother Solar really did an amazing job on my show. So check that out. Brother Monty did an amazing job on my show all 3 times. I think all 3 times were good, but I think that the Rahu and the technology gods were against us. And I think we figured it out on the last couple recordings. And I think in the future we'll just get better and better. And our synthesis will grow stronger and stronger. So there we go. And I think Matt's episodes will be amazing. He's such a professional, great. I loved the Zan discussion. I think it was like mediated perfectly. The Triforce, right? It was the 3 in synthesis. I brought in a secret weapon. So more to come, more episodes with Matt and more episodes with him as a co-host. So thank you all so much. And I don't know if Monty sells a mic, but if you have one, Monty, please plug. And then Matt, I thank you guys so much and have a great night. Okay, Matt. If Monty can't go, it's okay. You go ahead.
Okay, so again, thanks everyone that joined, that stayed, that will listen in the future, because we synthesize this in spaces that get saved. So that's very nice. Eventually, this will be in YouTube as well, in the process of posting all of them. But yes, I am Matt Mora. Again, Kabbalah, Tarot, Astrology, all the gist, tech and spirituality, and now music as well. So a lot of cool stuff. If you like everything that we talk so far, make sure to follow so you don't lose the crazy stuff that I post. And yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks, Jin, for hosting as well.
Thank you, Matt. And thank you so much, Brother Matt, for running our YouTube channel, The Grey Lodge. Yes. You are all YouTube content fucking creators. I know some of you are already content creators and you're like, oh, this is so cringe. And yeah, it is cringe, but you know what? Content creation is fucking cringe, okay? It's cringe. It's cringe in a big way. YouTube's cringe as fuck. So it is not cool. Hello, Joseph. We're just doing room shoutouts, so I'll do Joseph. Joseph, our McLuhan Scholar in residence for the Grey Lodge. Thank you for finding us and for coming to these spaces. Much obliged. Thank you so much, Joseph. I hope you had a great sunset. Also, a very interesting Kabbalistic period, right? Because the sunset is the ending and beginning of a new day, both at the same time. Something with a very non-dual quality, right? It's both a beginning and an ending, a threshold of both of those things. Almost an eclipse. You could say a sunset is an eclipse. Very interesting. So just think about that. That's a very tantric thing. I'll leave you guys on that. Okay. Threshold Saints. So I have an episode with, yes, Mr. Matt Murat coming up very soon. Mr. Also Monty coming up very soon. Who else did I say? Oh, Simon from Brahmastra, who's a metal musician from Australia. We talked about, he wrote a whole album that he kind of, I don't want to call it channeled, but he kind of said that, so that's okay. But he kind of pink rayed, we'll say, this album, and that's a metal album, and he wrote the lyrics that are actually really incredible, are about MK Ultra and particularly Project Montauk. And so I maybe, because I'm not like I'm flexible with conspiracies, like I believe them, but then I'm also like, yeah, it's not my religion, like I don't believe them. Like it's not like I'm not like, oh yeah, let's build like a monument to this thing. But like I believe them. But no, but I think I what I suggested to him was that perhaps the Project Montauk experiences were magical experiences, like what they were talking about. It's not like MK Ultra mind control. It's like these are Sephirotic, these are like explainable phenomena. Using Buddhism, using Kabbalah, using like modern magical ideas. Like these are all explainable things. I'm not saying it's not terrible. I'm saying they're all explainable, and maybe more of us have them than not. And maybe to not couch them in like fear and mind control and be like, yeah, if you use Kabbalah, you're like an evil, and if you do this, you're evil, and like who's evil and who's good in this world. Like I think it's a lot more gray. That's why it's the Grey Lodge. That was the whole purpose. It's like like what is after the body burns? It's like it's just smoke. It's just ash. That's it. And conceptually in Tantra, the idea when the body turns to ash is right at sunrise. So that's so interesting because Joseph's obviously coming into sunset. Sunrise is the day portion of the new day. It's not an actual new day in and of itself. It just is the light, luminous portion. So the night precedes the day. That's really interesting. Who controls time? can see this with X. I'm not saying look at my timestamps. Don't look at my timestamps, but you can see this. You can see that the app preferences certain times for posting, certain magical times. Okay, not super conventional ones either. There's a clear preference for numbers if you play them at all. And so, like, who also controls time is also about daylight savings time. That's about conceptual time. Who measures your time? How long do you have? We all need leisure time in a way. I'm not saying it's like all like grade and all of that, but like, yes, there has to be more than work and drudge. There has to be play. There has to be spirituality. There has to be, this is the one thing that I always thought was super useful about, like, not hoodoo, but like the sort of the African American stuff. It's about sometimes they'll say 5 roads and the Mexican stuff. We'll use the Mexican stuff as an example, like the Abre Camino to open the roads. This is such a fundamental idea. Like there are 5 roads, or sometimes there are 7 roads. Obviously, this is also like related to Kabbalah, like very directly 1-to-1. But anyway, so you can say like, okay, so there's 5 roads that can be opened, or 7 roads that can be opened. Okay, yes, Joseph, please go ahead.
I know that you're closing out, so it's another pin that I wanted to place from earlier, but you've brought it up, like you've just, you've gone there already, Jin, you've already arrived. Is the idea of, bringing it back to the Adam Kadmon, the American, in the birth of America, what are the first few words of that spell, you could say, that program that Matt would say, the app of the USA? What do they believe? What do they hold to be self-evident? The life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Now, what does pursuit imply? It implies space and time. It also implies that it is always out of grasp, and therefore it has been programmed that way. So I think the new America, like, why is it just not happiness? Life, liberty, and happiness sounds much better. Pursuit of happiness is, I don't want to buy the recipe. I want to buy the brownies. You know what I mean? So that's for later, but thank you again. I just want to say.
No, thank you so much, Joseph. Really appreciate it. I'm so glad that we've all kind of moored each other in this tumultuous time. I think it's been very interesting and edifying and like unconventional in the best way. So different and yet similar in weird ways. All interested in magic and metaphysics and the mind, and like very organic at the same time, like very people who've like sort of drifted into our orbit, like very cool, very like it's very modern. I always say this is very like Monty's episode, like very modern magic. So yeah, it's 100%. That's what this is. That's what this is about. It's like, what is modern magic? Well, Ipsos is one word, love's another word, justice is another word. I think all of those are good. So I think, keep those in mind. And I guess that's my words of wisdom is like, what is the American Adam Kadmon? Of course it's you, but it's also like, to the what degree do we like see other people rise to Adam Kadmon? Like, you shouldn't stand in anyone's way. You shouldn't lay klipas before them. If they're your enemy, that's different. Okay, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying. For the most part, you want to stay out of each other's like sphere of influence, but there are degrees of time where you have to intervene. And it's like, what are the angles of that? Well, it's the law. That's what the law is supposed to be. The law is supposed to be discriminating in the way that it's equally applied. And so I think this is also about like return to America. Like, what is the foundational root? It's not law misapplied. It's not misunderstanding, right? Like that. It's definitely not the inverse of Bina, and it's definitely not the klipa, the occultation. It's like what Joshua says. Like Joshua's right. It's like the praxis. There has to be praxis, and it's like what Joseph said. It's like it's not. The American spirit is restless. It's the cowboy. It's the eternal cowboy. Although you know that I don't like the word eternity because that implies perpetuity. People get caught up in like the playing the archetype way too much. Like that's what I even think is funny about jokingly referring to myself as a hipster, which is true but not true. It's true in the way that I am and was, but it's not true is that that is a LARP. That's an authenticity LARP. That's like blue collar, working class LARP. Like I knew it when I was doing it. I still like plaid to this day. It's a blue collar working class LARP. That's what it is. It's okay. It's fine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make it less authentic. It just is what it is. So that's the whole thing. And so I think that people have to be okay with what is new, and also also authenticity has so much to do with boba identity, like boba liberalism. Like boba is not an authentic drink. It's a fucking the Americans introduced powdered milk into Taiwan in the 50s. That's boba. Cassava powder, tapioca powder, that's from Southeast Asia. That's not even a particularly Chinese thing. It's really not. It's very jungle Asian, as Tim would say, as I would say, right? And so you have all these things brought into synthesis, and it's just like a frothy, very high calorie drink. It's not like nutritious or anything. And yeah, the flavors might be kind of Chinese, but they're kind of like I mean, it had its day, right? And that's kind of what bobaism is. It's kind of like that, like libtardy is over, but then like also maybe the left stuff was like way too much. Maybe the right stuff was way too much, and maybe we just say like fuck it all, and we just create our new, our own paradigm ourselves because it just seems like everything is so. If the arc is imperfect, what does Nuria do? I think that's a great place to kind of leave it. What do you guys think? I think that's a good place. Well, we'll wait 3 more minutes. At least give myself a magic number. Okay, what should we talk about? Threshold Saints, Simon, Monty and Thomas, JJK, Matt Murrah and Zan, John, of course. Then I have 2 women, Domino and Allison Quinn. So that'll be really cool. Allison is a lodge member, and she discussed the Aeon and Kenneth Grant. She was like, "Is Kenneth Grant too edgelord? I don't want her to be mad at me for saying that." And I was like, "No, I love Kenneth Grant. I don't understand the Lovecraftian mythos at all, though. I'm just being honest. Just like not that interesting to me, the Lovecraftian stuff. I'm always like a true Conan enjoyer. Like I like his Hyperborean mythology. I just transplant it to here. That's why it's Hyperborean. And it's not because I think Conan is the perfect hero. I actually don't. The hero I liked most was Doctor Strange. Obviously, I mean, there's no question about that. Sir Tim saying 100. Yeah, I agree. I mean, come on. I like magic. I like sorcery. It makes sense. Doctor Strange. I mean, that's who it was. The sorcerer supreme of the multiverse. His power could transcend the gods. That was the whole thing. Very Diamond Thunder. I'm just saying, I'm not saying I like those movies. I don't like those movies. I watched the first one like years ago in a theater. I thought it was the worst thing I'd ever seen. I honestly think I'm sorry, I really don't like those Marvel movies, like at all. Like none of them. They're so unappealing. I know some people like them, and I get it. And I'm not trying to be like a culture discourse bro. I'm not. I don't care. People can like what they like. I don't want to get into it. Don't get mad at me. But I don't like that stuff. I don't like anything. I actually don't really enjoy that much Hollywood stuff anymore. And it's not me being like oh, everything's bad and black pill. I'm anti black pill. I'm a clear pill, you know. And like shout out to the weird Mormons. There's nothing wrong. I mean, Monty did have a great tweet about this, but there's really nothing wrong with Mormons. We're just waiting until 22 after, and then we'll close. So I'm just riffing. I don't know if people enjoy this little segment of Jin's time riff. Because this is like the moment that I can be the most Silver Surfery, right? It is like the time, it's the being the Time Lord. That's that's the Silver Surfer's whole thing. He's an agent of the Time Lord, right? Because it's like Benat and Mercury. So he's the agent of the big Time Lord, the World Destroyer. But everything's made of stardust, so everything can also be recreated in what? Flux. That's very interesting, right? That's what the truth is also. Like on the timeline, it's like everything is flux. Everything is fake. I'm not saying to be like red pill or black pill and be like everything is fake. But yes, everything is also fake. It really is. And people often lie deliberately, intentionally. I'm such a naive person. I legit did not ever consider that you can just lie. Like that is the thing on the timeline. I don't like that. I like to say things in my cryptic, like, Princess of Babylon kind of way, and like Sethian, like Tantriana, like that's my way, right? Like I'm a much more, I like a non-dual wisdom, but I'm like pretty normie at the end of the day. Let's be honest. Like I'm very middle path at least. But I love magic. I love Left Hand Path. I love when Solar talks about Temple of Set. I feel the tingle. I feel I like it. It's like, oh, this is cool. This is like something in it. But it doesn't do anything for me, to be honest. Like, I think it's interesting, but it doesn't really do anything for me. I'm already there. The thing is like, Tantra was it for me, so it already brought me there. So that's why I'm always like, you should do Third G. You should do the thing that works for you. But I also think like people get very fixed on like what is transgressive, and then that's what I also think is interesting about the new Aeon. It balances it out. It's very Justice card, John. It's very, it's very Libran. It's very like bringing things into air, bringing Earth into air. That's how you could even say it, quantify it. The most aggregated and the least aggregated. But you could also say the air is the most aggregated because it's like invisible. It's like we don't understand all the constituent parts of air. But in Tantra, it's actually really easy. Air is actually 3 elements composed in one. It is earth, fire, and water at the same time. And that creates air. And through air can travel diamond thunder, the lightning between the sea of the upper waters and the sea of the primordial waters. It's the electric charge, the plus and the ultra. Well, one way to resolve polarities is to bring in the idea of the consort. So the one becomes the two, but they resolve together in what? Synthesis. It's all about synthesis. That's really what these spaces are all about. They're all about actual synthesis in terms of you coming together through space and time to consensually agree to hear not only but a lot of it is my weird speculative ideas, and then I make the boys riff. Poor boys. I make them riff off my ideas. And obviously next week, housekeeping, please bring all your weird archaeology, alternative history, gripes with Graham Hancock, disputes with Joe Rogan, weird Mormonism, whatever you want to talk about. Platinum plates found in Florida. That's what we're doing next week, and it's going to be an archaeologies, alternative currents in archaeologies roundtable. And yes, it will be part of I think it will be part of our Hyperborean series. But it can also just be a Friday Night Gnostic Mass, because I actually like that brand, and I think that we can bring that back sometimes. And I think they're all really fun, but I also think they're converging on the same ideas. I think there's a linkage, and I think it's you guys who are the linkage. It's not just me. It's like all of the co-hosts, but it's all the people that are reoccurring, whose names get brought up, and who kind of float in and out during the spaces, and you kind of make it real. Like you make it be heard across the world. It's very magic. Very Diamond Thunder. So, yeah, that's a great place to end it. Everybody have an amazing night. Stay safe. Do your prayers. Do your sadhana. Psychic self-defense all the way. Psychic offense is a great defense. I agree with that. Be Diamond Thunder. Don't be fixed. Be dancing in the carnal fire. I'm Jin the Ninja. I host a show called Threshold Saints plus Ultra, baby. Good night.